Music. On January 7, 1904, in Manhattan, Louise Bolt passes away at age 42 without warning. Her heart, worn down after months of sickness, gives out at last. A telegraph operator dispatches a notice northward, 300 miles along the Hudson, then up the St. Lawrence River to a tiny spot amid the Thousand Islands, Hard Island, home to 300 laborers constructing America's grandest private castle. The dispatch is short and to the point: halt all work. In mere hours, masons set aside their tools, woodworkers leave their benches, craftsmen walk away from half-done tile designs. The 300 crew members depart the isle after 4 years of toiling on a tribute to romance that remains forever unfinished. The structure rises 6 levels tall, boasting 120 chambers and 43,000 square feet, crafted from pink granite sourced from a nearby isle, inspired by Prussia's Rhineland fortresses. It ran $2.5 million, which adjusts to more than $80 million in today's terms, intended as a Valentine's present from a former kitchen hand to the partner who helped forge his success, from George Bolt to his spouse, Louise. George Bolt never returned to that isle. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe. It's what keeps these tales coming. Drop a comment too if you've got thoughts. I always appreciate your input. Now, let's rewind to the beginnings. Not on some remote rock, but in New York City's bustling eateries, where a teenage newcomer started scrubbing plates. From errand boy to tycoon, 1864, New York Harbor. A 13-year-old lad disembarks from a vessel out of Prussia, penniless. George Carl Bolt, born April 25, 1851, on the Baltic Isle of Rügen, a haven of fortresses and seaside getaways for affluent Berliners seeking relaxation. As a kid, he observed the elite's lifestyles, how inns operated, and the way hospitality bred opulence. Here in America, he stood solo. No kin, no cash, no grasp of the language. He landed a gig at a modest inn by the wharves. Errand boy, the bottom rung, bussing plates, rinsing dishes, scouring cookware, hauling trash. His wage was pitiful, his bed a dank cellar nook. Yet he observed keenly, absorbed lessons, and grasped a key truth overlooked by many in his role. The lodging trade wasn't merely about structures or cuisine. It centered on elevating guests' sense of value. By his early 20s, Bolt had climbed to overseeing the kitchen, exhausting labor, meager earnings still. He once ventured from New York, chasing prospects in Texas. The attempt flopped. He came back to the city even broker, grabbing another culinary post. Then, at 25, an opportunity arrived that shifted his path entirely. William Carrere, overseer of the Philadelphia Club, sought a dining hall supervisor. The Philadelphia Club was no ordinary social spot. It was the nation's eldest and most elite, established in 1734, drawing the urban aristocracy, venerable fortunes from the colonial era. Bolt accepted the job. He relocated to Philadelphia in 1876. There, at the club, he discovered the workings of true affluence, not flashy new riches, but subtle, assured seclusion. Patrons demanded flawlessness without showiness, service that foresaw desires unspoken, utmost privacy. Bolt thrived. Even better, he encountered her. Louise Augusta Carrere, daughter of William, born in 1860 in Philadelphia, raised amid the service scene, observing her dad's club oversight. She knew the ropes of hospitality, excellence, and flair. She was about 15 at their meeting. He was 26. They dated respectfully, with her father's blessing. They wed on June 14, 1877. At 17, she was in 26. Hey. This union stood out for its equal footing. Louise brought no vast dowry. Her dad held esteem but not immense wealth, a club attendant, not a patron. And Bolt, skilled as he was, remained an employed director. Together, they'd amassed their riches. In just 4 years, they'd scraped up funds for a bold move. In 1881, Bolt bought the Bellevue Hotel at Broad and Walnut in Philadelphia. A modest venue, leaning more toward eatery than lodging, yet fully theirs. Louise revamped it. She brought in ideas that feel ordinary today, but broke ground back then. Vases of fresh blooms at each spot, flickering tapers for gentle glow, seating arranged for seclusion, focus on visual elegance turning supper into an event beyond mere eating. Her vision proved vital. Affluent ladies chafed at homebound routines. They craved refined venues beyond their walls for mingling. The Bellevue filled that niche. Word about the spot spread fast. The menu shone. Bolt recruited top cooks and compensated them generously. But Louise's flair made it unforgettable. Before long, Philly's high society flocked there nightly. Rumor has it the Bolts even sent their famed dish, Philadelphia terrapin, to Queen Victoria across the Atlantic. Soon after, Bolt snapped up the rival Stratford Hotel right opposite, controlling both sides of the block. Rivals gone, stronghold secured. By the closing years of the 1880s, the Bolts had earned a strong standing in the hospitality world. Affluent New Yorkers journeying to Philadelphia booked stays at the Bellevue. The Astors stopped by. The Vanderbilts enjoyed meals there. Such appearances carried weight, especially since one regular visitor was Abner Bartlett, a property broker employed by William Waldorf Astor. Bartlett admired Bolt's operational skills and Louise's polished touch. He brought them up in conversations with Astor. William Waldorf. Astor envisioned a grand project, a New York City hotel that would eclipse every other in the nation. He sought expertise in upscale hospitality, the ability to oversee a vast enterprise, and a track record of drawing high society patrons. In 1891, Astor extended an invitation to Bolt, relocate to New York and oversee the upcoming Waldorf Hotel. Yet, a snag arose. Astor's cousin, John Jacob Astor IV, harbored deep animosity toward him. The Astor family's two lines had clashed for years. At this point, they were erecting rival hotels on neighboring lots along Fifth Avenue. The rivalry ignited over a slight. Caroline Astor, the prominent Mrs. Astor, resided at 355 Fifth Avenue. She hosted her yearly gala there, dictating New York high society's inner circle. Her nephew, William Waldorf Astor, resented her control over social access. In 1890, he aimed to embarrass her by constructing a hotel, a business venture, directly beside her home. William Waldorf engaged architect Henry Hardenberg for the design, featuring German Renaissance aesthetics and an ornate exterior. Afterward, he reached out to George Bolt with the proposal to serve as manager. Bolt saw the potential, but also the hazards. The site was in a quiet neighborhood. Triumph hinged on luring elite visitors who might object to the intrusion. Moreover, Bolt had to secure $100,000 merely for outfitting it. Still, he agreed. Louise's flair for decor would ensure the Waldorf sophistication offset any location drawbacks. The Waldorf debuted on March 13, 1893, right amid a harsh economic downturn sweeping the country. Inauspicious launch. Bolt endured a collapse under the pressure. Though his approach endured, the Waldorf provided rare access to those with means. In tough periods, the ultra-rich flaunted their spending to affirm their detachment from woes. Soon after opening, it turned a profit. Next, John Jacob Astor IV, son of Mrs. Astor, countered. He controlled the land opposite the Waldorf. He retained the identical architect and revealed plans for the Astoria Hotel, 17 floors, even grander in detail. Set to launch in 1897, George Bolt stepped in as mediator. He persuaded John Jacob IV to allow him to rent and run the Astoria too. Then, he urged both rival relatives that combining efforts would serve all parties. Remarkably, they consented. The Astoria commenced operations in 1897. Bolt swiftly integrated the sites, linking the structures and operating them jointly as the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. With 1,600 rooms, it stood as the globe's biggest hotel and America's premier destination. However, the establishment's triumphs owed much to more than Bolt's oversight. Louise's imprint permeated the place. She crafted guest quarters and common areas with graceful femininity, daily blooms, and gentle illumination. Each woman visitor discovered a pincushion awaiting on her vanity, a subtle nod to catering to ladies' preferences. She advocated bold shifts. The venue permitted gentlemen to light up around ladies in select zones. She scrapped distinct portals for women. Ladies now accessed via the primary entrance, on par with males, affirming their parity as visitors. The Waldorf Astoria pioneered features that shaped hotel norms. Room service emerged, letting patrons summon meals to their suites. Oscar Cherky, the famed maître d'hôtel of the Waldorf, devised iconic fare such as the Waldorf salad. The spot championed Thousand Island dressing. the Waldorf transcended mere lodging. It evolved into a cultural pillar, a venue for sealing commerce, unveiling elite unions, hosting commanders-in-chief, and convening Manhattan's upper crust for prestige. The New York Times eventually noted that Bolt, above all others, forged the contemporary U.S. hotel. He had elevated inns from mere stopovers to communal hubs, sites where communal life unfolded. The Bolts now commanded immense fortunes. Bolt commanded the nation's top wage for any worker as the century turned. Apart from pay, he held the tenancy and management rights, yielding hefty returns. His net worth was gauged at $15 to $25 million then, equivalent to about $400 to $700 million in today's terms. They kept residences within the Waldorf Astoria, immersed in the opulence they had shaped. Their offspring pursued top-tier education. George Jr. later studied at Cornell University. Clover trained at Manhattan's Spence School. By the 1890s end, the Bolts had realized the American ideal, far surpassing the visions of that young 13-year-old steward upon docking in New York Harbor. Through collaboration, expertise, and unwavering commitment to excellence, they had erected a dynasty. George Louise and George welcomed two youngsters, George Jr. arriving in 1879, and Clover Louise, who came along in 1883. Their household enjoyed every advantage: opulence, social standing, and triumphs. Yet George often reflected on scenes from his early years in Prussia, majestic castles lining the waterways, seasonal hideaways where affluent clans fled the urban swelter, serene spots amid isles and ponds where existence unfolded at a more leisurely rhythm. He and Louise craved such a sanctuary, a retreat distant from the relentless bustle of the Waldorf, a secluded haven, tranquil and restful, dedicated solely to family life. During the summer of 1895, they embarked on a northward trip to an area praised as the nation's premier seasonal escape, known as the Thousand Islands, where they uncovered bliss. That same summer, the Bolts hopped aboard a locomotive departing New York City, bound for the Thousand Islands area along the St. Lawrence River, straddling the New York-Canada frontier. It marked their initial excursion there. Tales of the locale had reached them via affluent patrons at the Waldorf Astoria, many of whom flocked there for the warmer months. The spot had gained popularity among the Gilded Age's upper crust, drawing tycoons who erected lavish seasonal dwellings on isolated islets. The St. Lawrence River, linking Lake Ontario to the Atlantic, featured more than 800 islands across a 60-mile span. Certain ones spanned wide enough for grand residences, while others could scarcely support a lone sapling. Collectively, they formed a vista of stunning allure: azure waters, verdant landmasses, and striking rocky outcrops. Prosperous clans from New York, Philadelphia, and Boston had been constructing vacation retreats in the vicinity since the 1870s. In contrast to Newport's stiff, rivalry-driven atmosphere, the Thousand Islands promised seclusion amid untouched splendor. Every group claimed its own islet, freeing them from societal displays, just endless waves, sailing, angling, and laid-back warmth. The Bolts instantly adored the territory. They lodged at one of the opulent inns. The area boasted multiple expansive establishments tailored for affluent seasonal guests. However, George, experienced in managing such venues, grew drawn to the notion of personal possession. An islet, a familial getaway, ample room for the kids to roam unbound. They started scouting potential acquisitions. Many islands were taken, though properties surfaced for sale from time to time. They inspected a handful. None quite fit, either oversized, overly refined, or awkwardly placed. Then word came of Hart Island, 5 acres, ideally located close to Alexandria Bay, the area's vibrant hub. It already hosted a bungalow crafted by its prior resident, Congressman E. Kirka Hart. The estate's history proved intricate. Hart passed away in 1893. His heirs offloaded the islet to Edward Wallace Dwey for $10,000 on July 5, 1895. Merely 11 days afterward, on July 16, Louise Bolt acquired it from Dwey. The deed listed the sum as $1. Whether that reflected the true cost, a gesture among friends, or merely a placeholder for paperwork, stays a mystery. In any event, the Bolts secured their debut island. George acted swiftly to rebrand it. Formerly Hart Island after the late owner, he tweaked the name to Hart Island. The intent carried deep meaning. This spot would embody warmth, kinship, and tenderness, not merely a leisure outpost, but a haven centered on life's true priorities. He took it a step beyond. The island's edges weren't inherently Hart-like. George directed laborers to sculpt them manually, shifting soil, positioning rocks, and adjusting the outlines so that, seen from on high, it evoked a Valentine's emblem. An ambitious project driven by metaphor. Still, George relished such bold flourishes. The Bolts returned for subsequent summers to Hart Island, occupying and enlarging the standing bungalow. Each year deepened their affection for the Thousand Islands. The landscape embodied the antithesis of New York and Philadelphia's frenzy, serene, verdant, and relaxed. George started snapping up additional land. By the close of the 1890s, he had gathered roughly 3,000 acres across the district, primarily on adjacent Wellesley Island. He transformed Wellesley Island profoundly, adding a landing strip, an 18-hole golf layout, a polo pitch, horse facilities, racket courts, and various bungalows leased to companions and colleagues. Wellesley Island evolved into a bespoke leisure compound. The Bolts ran a functional farm on the premises. George relished the country squire persona, directing activities, entertaining visitors, and competing in polo matches. It stood worlds apart from the Waldorf Astoria's fervor, though Hart Island held its unique allure. More compact and cozy, it served exclusively as a family refuge. The offspring adored it. George Jr. and Clover passed their summers there, paddling boats, splashing in the water, and venturing to nearby isles. Louise held Hart Island especially dear. For 20 years, she had partnered with George to erect lodgings for strangers, the Bellevue, the Waldorf Astoria, crafting elegance for outsiders. Hart Island belonged to them alone, intimate and heartfelt. Come 1899, the original bungalow felt confining. The clan had surpassed its capacity. George started contemplating growth beyond mere additions to their modest cottage. He envisioned erecting a more enduring structure, one capable of hosting large family events, entertaining visitors, and functioning as a genuine seasonal residence. Louise, meanwhile, harbored her own visions. With her expertise in outfitting hotel suites, crafting public areas, and fashioning sophisticated settings for her career, she pondered the freedom of designing a personal haven free from business limitations. What if she could construct her ideal abode? George paid close attention. Soon he devised a grand romantic gesture aligned with his sentimental nature. He would construct a genuine castle for Louise, not some opulent residence merely dubbed a castle, but an authentic fortress inspired by the Rhineland fortifications from his youth in Prussia. It promised to be immense and ornate, standing out uniquely amid the Thousand Islands. He planned to unveil it as a Valentine's Day present in 1905. Though their wedding anniversary fell on June 14th, the romantic holiday felt more fitting for such a tribute to their bond. Accounts indicate Louise was aware of the endeavor. Subsequent reports imply her participation in planning sessions. Yet George aimed to reveal the finished edifice as a stunning revelation, the epitome of grandeur, splendor, and the realization of all her design aspirations. At 48, he was she, 39. Together, they had forged a prosperous life over 2 decades. Now, he sought to create something solely for her. In late 1899, George engaged the Philadelphia firm of G.W. and W.D. Hewitt, the same team that would eventually craft his expansive Bellevue Stratford Hotel in the city. His sole directive? Fashion America's most magnificent private fortress. The Hewitts set to work sketching blueprints. George and Louise examined them, suggesting refinements. She contributed substantially to spatial arrangements and decorative elements. As with all their joint ventures, this would be a shared effort. By the start of 1900, the designs were finalized. 6 levels, 120 chambers in Rhineland, fortress aesthetics featuring spires, battlements, and intricate masonry from rose-colored granite, sourced from the adjacent Oak Island, another of George's holdings. The projected expense stood at $2.5 million, comparable to about $80 million in contemporary terms, surpassing the budgets of numerous Gilded Age estates. Financial limits played no role. George's wealth from the Waldorf Astoria flowed abundantly. He established a deadline: completion by Valentine's Day, 1905. 5 years of construction, an audacious timeline, yet feasible with ample labor and materials. That spring in 1900, George issued the command, commence building, recruit 300 laborers, withhold no funds. Hart Island, once a serene seasonal escape, was poised to become the epicenter of the boldest individual construction undertaking in U.S. history. The vision. During the winter of 1899, George Pullman conferred with the Hewitt siblings in Philadelphia to lock in the blueprint for Hart Island. Beyond a single fortress, he imagined a comprehensive compound of structures operating as an independent summer retreat. His architectural muse drew from Rhineland strongholds lining the Rhine River in Germany. Raised on the Prussian Isle of Rügen, where affluent clans holidayed amid a terrain studded with citadels, he recalled edifices merging fortified Gothic traits with Renaissance refinement, spires and parapets paired with lavish openings and ornate flourishes. This fusion of robustness and grace captivated him. Such a stronghold would proclaim enduring roots. The Pullmans had transcended their immigrant origins. They were firmly entrenched, a bastion, the pinnacle of old-world nobility, raised by an ex-scullery worker in the New World's expanse. The Hewitts rendered George's concepts into precise schematics. The central fortress adopted an Italian Renaissance form infused with German Romanesque touches. It soared 6 stories, incorporating the spires, encompassing 120 spaces across 43,393 square feet. 4 minor spires at 40 feet encircled 2 taller ones reaching 60 feet, while the principal spire ascended 75 feet as the focal point. The footprint measured 170 feet in length and 160 feet across, imposing yet practical, not excessively vast. This was meant as a livable dwelling for kin and company, with chambers tailored for everyday occupancy rather than mere ostentation. Yet the fortress formed just one facet of the scheme. George pictured a full island domain with diverse edifices, each fulfilling dedicated roles. Initially, a boathouse, with ownership of scores of vessels, over 60 by some counts, ranging from modest skiffs to the 104-foot houseboat Loch-Lass. He required a vast shelter for crafts up to 128 feet. Positioned not on Hart Island but on the opposite Wellesley Island, it ensured convenient entry from their Wellesley lands. Next, a power station. Lacking ties to continental grids, Hart Island demanded an internal steam-driven dynamo for contemporary illumination and energy across the grounds. The facility would rise on the island's eastern shore, styled to resemble a Gothic guard tower. Rather than a simple storage building, it blended aesthetics and utility seamlessly. Next came the Ulster Tower, envisioned as a play area, or more precisely, a guest house and recreational hub. Inspired by the Ulster River in Germany, it drew from 16th-century German defensive towers. Yet its interior featured a bowling lane, a billiards lounge, a reading room, sleeping quarters, a cooking area, and a dance hall dubbed the Shell Room. Soaring 90 feet tall, this edifice would stand out dramatically on its own. Yet here, it formed just one element among many on the property. Then, the Parisal Arch. Hart Island's primary access point would involve an ornate stone portal along the shoreline, complete with a retractable drawbridge. Visitors arriving via watercraft would traverse this portal, instantly sensing they were stepping into an exceptional realm. In addition to the structures, Louise envisioned sweeping landscape enhancements, formal Italian-style gardens with cascading fountain basins, a serene swan lake, gazebos and patios, European imported marble sculptures, meandering trails across meticulously groomed terrain, and plantings of trees and blooms optimized for visual splendor. The overall expenditure amounted to $2.5 million for the build, plus extras for decor, artwork, and groundswork. Upon full realization, the endeavor could climb to $3 million, which, accounting for inflation, equates to about $80 to $100 million in today's dollars. George had the resources to cover it. His lease on the Waldorf Astoria yielded vast revenues. At the same time, he was orchestrating a grand overhaul of the Stratford Hotel in Philadelphia, transforming it into the Bellevue Stratford at a cost of $8 million. He funded both initiatives from ongoing earnings. However, this undertaking differed from the Bellevue Stratford. The hotel was commerce, pure and simple. This was intimate, a tribute, a legacy, a declaration of their union's triumphs and the depth of Louise's importance in his life. The goal for finishing stood at Valentine's Day, 1905. The Bolts had wed on June 14, 1877, yet the romantic holiday felt more fitting for such a token. Reports indicate George intended to reveal the finished castle on that occasion, offering it to Louise as the pinnacle of affectionate presents. Whether she truly remained unaware of the plans, as idyllic accounts claim, remains doubtful. She participated closely in planning sessions. She held firm views on spatial arrangements and ornamental details. The castle held no total secrecy for her, but the breadth of George's dedication and the magnificence of the end result, that would deliver the true astonishment. Building occurred solely in milder weather. The St. Lawrence River iced over during cold months, complicating the delivery of supplies and crew to the site. Efforts spanned approximately April to October annually. 5 years provided 5 building periods. A demanding timeline, yet feasible with solid coordination and ample manpower. George assembled a vast workforce, up to 300 personnel at the height of activity. Stonecutters, woodworkers, decorators, artisans, and general hands. They resided on the island throughout the active season, laboring 6 days weekly from first light to twilight. Initial efforts focused on site readiness. The pre-existing cottage on Hart Island required relocation. During the 1899 to 1900 winter, with the St. Lawrence encased in ice, the team dismantled the 30-room dwelling and ferried it over the solidified waterway to Wellesley Island. Once there, it was reconstructed to serve as the Thousand Islands Country Clubhouse. In time, it evolved into the Hart House Inn. Now, with the island vacant, building commenced. Spring 1900 brought action. Crews set up base camps on Hart Island. Supplies started flowing in. Stone, timber, metal beams, implements, machinery. The level of preparation proved remarkable. The once peaceful Hart Island summer haven turned into a bustling worksite. George acquired Oak Island expressly to extract granite for the development. The rosy gray rock discovered there suited ideally for the castle's facade. Unique hue, sturdy quality, and procured nearby. Extraction teams sliced enormous slabs and shipped them over to Hart Island via flatboats. Groundwork for the base kicked off. Island-based projects demand extra foresight compared to landlocked ones. Deliveries arrive solely by sea. No quick trips to vendors for oversights. All necessities must be foreseen and shipped across water. Yet George Bolt excelled in management. Overseeing the Waldorf history involved juggling countless elements each day. Personnel, provisions, visitor demands, upkeep. He channeled that expertise to Hart Island. The team enjoyed full support. Progress advanced smoothly. Come summer 1900, preliminary structures started taking form. The yacht house on Wellesley Island ascended swiftly, an enormous metal skeleton build exceeding 50 feet in height, 160 feet in length, and 115 feet across. It included 3 spacious vessel slots, poised for growth to 4. The powerhouse base was positioned along Hart Island's east side. The Ulster Tower started emerging along the south coast. The Parasol Arch materialized at the water's edge. The Bolts observed from their interim home on Wellesley Island. Each summer, the family journeyed northward to monitor the advancements. Louise strolled amid the half-finished buildings, picturing the polished spaces within. George conferred with the Hewitts and the building overseers, fine-tuning various aspects. By then, the kids, George Jr. and Clover, had reached their teen years. They roamed the site during off hours for the crew, scaling the emerging spires and dreaming up the grandeur of the completed property. Toward the end of 1900, following the initial building phase, clear strides were apparent. The boathouse stood almost ready. The generator building and Ulster Tower advanced steadily. The parapet gateway loomed strikingly along the shoreline, while, in the leveled heart of Hart Island, workers poured the base for the primary residence. Enormous rock slabs positioned with exactitude, metal supports starting to ascend, the contours of George's ambition taking form. 4 additional building periods lay ahead, 4 more warm months with 300 laborers reshaping Hart Island, 4 more years before Valentine's Day 1905, when George intended to unveil the fully realized castle to Louise. Matters unfolded as anticipated. Funds stayed within limits. The schedule appeared feasible. Craftsmanship surpassed hopes. Within 4 years, Hart Island would shine as the gem of the Thousand Islands. The Bolts would possess their ideal retreat. The tribute to their union would endure across eras. 4 years, merely 4 more. The Isle reborn. During the 1900 warm season, Hart Island resembled a bustling manufacturing hub. 300 laborers resided in makeshift quarters throughout the building period. They toiled 6 days weekly, with Sundays free, from sunrise to sunset, spanning April's thaw until October's frost, seizing every possible moment prior to the cold halting activities. The supply hurdles proved daunting. All equipment, rock and timber, arrived via watercraft. George devised an intricate delivery network, with flatboats shuttling nonstop from the continent and Oak Island, the latter yielding granite. A dedicated armada focused solely on provisioning the Hart Island endeavor. The initial completions involved the auxiliary edifices. The central fortress demanded extended time, yet the peripheral ones could wrap up sooner, offering prompt functionality and visible momentum. The boathouse on Wellesley Island reached near completion by autumn 1900, vast in scale. The figures were astounding. Towering over 50 feet, stretching 160 feet in length and 115 feet across. Iron beam skeleton upholding the edifice. Cutting-edge design for its time. 3 spacious slips initially planned for George's collection of about 70 vessels. The boathouse's interior rivaled upscale New York City venues. Timber accents crafted with finesse, room for stowing craft, plus areas for upkeep and fixes, far beyond a mere shelter for ships. A true workshop ensuring vessels received meticulous attention. Subsequently, a 4th slip was incorporated to house Lucille, the 104-foot houseboat. Construction expenses for the boathouse hovered around $50,000, equivalent to about $1.5 million nowadays for such a maritime storage complex. It underscored that finances posed no barrier to this venture. On Hart Island proper, the powerhouse emerged along the eastern side, styled as an ancient turret, circular masonry with a sturdy protective vibe, yet equipped with contemporary tech. Within lay a steam-driven dynamo supplying power across the domain, electric illumination filling the castle and landscapes, blending modern energy with a historic facade. Reports from the period pegged the powerhouse at $40,000. Cost held little sway. The priority, flawless operation and striking aesthetics. The parapet arch along the waterfront gained bold prominence, serving as the primary portal for visitors arriving by sea to Hart Island. Twin pillars upholding a vaulted span, with clearance below for a retractable span. The span could lift and drop, permitting passage to a sheltered pier beyond. The arch embodied spectacle, though practically redundant. Craft could moor at other island spots without issue, but its emblematic role was vital. Visitors traversing this portal would grasp they were stepping into a remarkable domain, a self-contained realm boasting its guarded access. The arch's build price, tagged at $25,000 or $750,000 in current value for a portal alone. Yet the standout initial edifice was the Ulster Tower on the southern coast, overlooking Alexandria Bay. Soaring 90 feet inspired by a 16th-century Rhine watchtower from the Ulster River area in Hamburg. Constructed with deliberate tilts in the walls, jagged overheads, and asymmetrical roofing. Features crafted to mimic genuine old-world strongholds, but interiors fully up-to-date. The tower housed a pair of bowling lanes in its lower story. Ingenious excavation into the Isle's bedrock, flawlessly aligned surfaces equipped with accurate pin setups. The Bolt clan and their visitors could enjoy bowling within a setting that the structure resembled a fortress tower meant to shelter troops during a siege. Upstairs from the bowling area lay a billiards parlor equipped with top-tier tables and gear. Next came a library boasting integrated shelving and cozy nooks for reading. Even higher, guest quarters fully outfitted with amenities. Capping it off were a kitchen and the shell chamber, a round venue crafted for dances and shows, adorned in seashell motifs and maritime accents. Finished and unveiled in the summer of 1899, the tower saw action even before the primary castle work kicked off officially. George threw a bash there for the New York Bankers Association, proving its usability and grandeur. Certain accounts claim the Bolts temporarily resided in the Olter Tower amid the castle's erection. Others point to them bunking in a residence on Wellesley Island over the building phases. Either way, the tower proved livable and hinted at the full estate's potential. Its price tag hit $15,000, equivalent to roughly $450,000 in modern terms, a hefty sum for what amounted to a visitor's annex and leisure spot. Come autumn 1900, after merely one building campaign, Hart Island had evolved from a modest retreat into a lavish setup. The yacht facility stood ready, the power plant advanced nicely, the Ulster Tower done and buzzing with events, the Parasol Arch looming strikingly by the shore, and smack in the island's heart, the castle's base took shape, enormous stone slabs arranged with exactitude, metal skeletons starting to ascend. The castle's outline clear, 170 ft by 160 ft. Laborers now grasped the project's magnitude. This would dwarf anything they'd constructed before. Building the central castle proceeded with careful planning. Base layer dug deep and fortified to bear 6 levels of stone and metal. Next, the iron skeleton for stability. Followed by outer granite facades, stones hewn accurately at the Oak Island quarry and slotted into position on site. The stone's unique rose-gray hue, local to the area, caught the light just right to shimmer in soft pink tones. A stunning yet sturdy choice, resilient against the brutal cold seasons when frost and gales assaulted the Isles. The masons labored with remarkable accuracy. Every piece meshed flawlessly with its counterparts, no spaces, no flaws. If executed right, this edifice could endure for ages. George insisted on excellence, compensating generously to secure it. The Hewitt's blueprint featured assorted towers of different elevations, forming a striking skyline. 4 modest ones at 40 ft, a pair of taller ones at 60 ft, and the dominant core spire reaching 75 ft. Viewed from the lake, the structure ascended in tiers, guiding gazes skyward to the peak. Hearts dotted the motif throughout, etched in rock accents, woven into ironwork, embedded in flooring and ornaments. Kept understated and discreet, these touches quietly affirmed the estate as a tribute to romance. George's emblematic touches permeated the whole domain. By the close of 1900, as work halted for the cold, the initial season's advances shone through. Auxiliary structures largely wrapped up, castle base set with metal bones emerging, supplies amassed for the thaw. Crews headed back to continental gigs until spring's return. George and Louise headed to New York and the Waldorf history for the off-season. Yet they toted drawings and blueprints, hashing out specifics for the year ahead. Spatial arrangements, wall treatments, adornment selections. Such matters filled their downtime, lost in visions of the fortress materializing on their retreat. The spring of 1901 brought thawing waters. Teams reassembled. The next building push commenced. Over that summer, the castle's sides climbed. Ground level, then the next, the stone shell advancing relentlessly. Openings for panes outlined, rooftop framework underway. By autumn, the edifice gained a familiar form, not mere groundwork and girders anymore, but a genuine structure. Meanwhile, outlying facilities saw polish. The power station got its dynamo and wiring set up, the boat shelter's insides wrapped with shelving and repair zones. The terrain started getting shaped. Gardeners tilled earth, sketched plots set in saplings and bushes. Louise invested much of the 1901 period on the island. She conferred with artisans on fitting out nuances. She paced emerging spaces, picturing their setup and purpose. She collaborated with groundskeepers on the Italianate plots envisioned for the property. Still, her well-being raised flags. No crises as yet, merely ongoing weariness, trouble climbing steps, shortness of breath from light efforts. At 41 in 1901, she wasn't aged, but juggling the Waldorfatoria operations alongside Hart Island, oversight proved draining. George observed the changes but chose not to fret too much. Louise had proven resilient over the years. For a quarter century, she'd partnered with him on the job, refusing to let bodily aches disrupt her duties. She could take it easier once the castle stood finished. Those warm Thousand Island summers would recharge her vitality. By the close of the second building phase, they'd made impressive strides. The lower level's outer walls were mostly done. The roof frame was up, with glass panes and entryways going in, setting the stage for inside fittings. Plastering, floor laying, stair building, and ornate touches lay ahead. During the 1901 or 1902 winter, the Bolts headed back to Manhattan once more. Louise appeared wearier than before. The endless pressures of the Waldorf history, organizing soirees, overseeing employees, upholding the establishment's prestige, took their toll. George proposed she ease off a bit, delegate some tasks to the team, yet Louise turned him down. The Waldorf history belonged to them both. She'd helped forge it standing right beside him. She had no intention of scaling back her contributions merely because fatigue set in. In secret, though, she consulted physicians. The verdict arrived in 1902, either tuberculosis or perhaps a cardiac issue. Records remain vague and accounts vary. One undeniable truth was that Louise's condition had worsened far beyond what anyone first suspected. In the Gilded Age, tuberculosis spread widely. No real cures were available. Doctors recommended relaxation, nutritious meals, and crisp outdoor air. Elevated or coastal settings were thought to aid recovery. The Thousand Islands, with their pure breezes and serene surroundings, could prove restorative. Alternatively, if it stemmed from the heart, rheumatic damage, or some other weakness, options stayed slim. The advice boiled down to repose and steering clear of strain. Fingers crossed it wouldn't progress. Louise received ongoing medical attention. A doctor accompanied the family to track her progress, yet she demanded to stay engaged with Hard Island. The castle represented her vision as well. She was determined to witness its completion. In spring 1902, the third building period kicked off. Against her doctor's counsel, Louise traveled northward. She toured the castle's inner areas, now mostly sealed from the elements. She examined blueprints for surface treatments in the rooms. She picked out tiles, signed off on wall coverings, and settled on lamp setups, though ascending steps had grown challenging. The crew erected interim ramps to let her reach higher levels. She paused often, requiring breaks. George observed her growing frailty with mounting worry. The timeline held steady. After 1902 came two final pushes in 1903 and 1904, leading to the Valentine's Day 1905 debut. The castle would stand ready. Louise would heal amid the tranquil haven they'd fashioned. That was the vision, the aspiration, the vow George had given at the outset of this endeavor. Some $2.5 million poured in, 4 years of effort, 300 workers toiling across 4 building cycles, one whole island reshaped into a lavish domain. Every bit of it, each rock, each flourish, each cent, aimed at Louise. The castle ascended steadily. The vision materialized in stone. Only 2 more years to go. Constructing the castle. Music. Come spring 1900, major building work commenced. The base had wrapped up by late 1899 into early 1900. Enormous stone slabs anchored firmly into Hart Island's underlying rock. An iron skeleton engineered to bear 6 levels of granite barriers and intricate roof designs. A feat of planning unmatched for any personal dwelling. The castle's layout brimmed with intricacy. Far from a plain squared-off shell with mere adornments, this evoked a true fortress, diverse wings at varied elevations, spires in assorted dimensions, jagged roof edges forming striking outlines. The Hewitts had sketched blueprints blending real Rhineland fortress traits with practical modern living. The entry level featured communal areas, a vast foyer boasting a curving stairway, parlors for receptions, a formal eating space, reading nooks tailored for company and kin assemblies. Soaring vaults from 12 to 15 feet evoked majesty yet avoided feeling crushingly vast. Level 2 held family sleeping quarters and cozy lounges. George and Louise claimed a primary chamber set, distinct areas for George Jr. and Clover on their stays. Extra rooms for relatives and intimates, lavatories aplenty, equipped with cutting-edge pipes and amenities, extravagance beyond most folks' dreams. Higher tiers offered more visitor spaces and servant lodgings. The spires housed unique zones, lookout spots with sweeping vistas, compact retreat offices, holding spots, each story crafted for deliberate uses. Even the lower levels shone with detail: cooking zones set for grand banquets, pantries for provisions, vintages, essentials, helps dorms and task spaces, an indoor pool, utility hubs for warmth and services, plus conduits, subterranean paths linking estate sections, letting personnel traverse discreetly among structures. The ton. The infrastructure plan was notably grand in scope. A key tunnel extended from the primary castle structure to the power station located along the island's eastern boundary. This allowed personnel to service the generator and deliver coal or other essentials without exposure to the castle's central zones. A separate passageway linked to the auxiliary facilities. The property operated seamlessly thanks to its concealed support systems. As the fortifications ascended throughout 1901, the edifice's immense proportions came into clear view. Contemporary images depict it overshadowing Hard Island. Approaching via boat across the water, arrivals would behold spires emerging beyond the treetops. The pinkish-gray granite shimmered under the midday light. Though unfinished, it already exuded a commanding presence. The building methodology was exacting. Every granite slab required precise shaping at the Oak Island quarry. Laborers labeled each segment to denote its precise spot within the castle's framework. Flatboats ferried the stones to Hard Island, where masons assembled them on site. Any flaw necessitated carving a replacement. George refused to accept setbacks or excess material loss. The endeavor operated on an industrial level. During the height of building activity, 300 laborers toiled at once. Quarry operators on Oak Island, boat handlers moving goods, masons on Hard Island placing the granite, woodworkers erecting inner frameworks, tilers applying slate roofing, smiths forging ornamental features, pipe fitters and wiring specialists setting up contemporary utilities, decorators and applicators completing finishes. Orchestrating such a team demanded advanced administration. George drew on his experience managing the Waldorf history, dividing intricate processes into focused duties, engaging specialists for specific functions, upholding excellence via ongoing supervision. He made frequent trips amid the building periods, reviewing progress and conferring with foremen. The Huits served as supervising architects. Their blueprints were comprehensive, yet building inevitably calls for modifications. Stone elements seldom aligned flawlessly with schematics. Climate influences timelines. Crews uncover challenges unforeseen in the designs. The Hewitts revised plans accordingly without straying from the core concept. Heart motifs emerged throughout the architecture, integrated with elegance rather than excess or whimsy. Subtle incorporations of the emblem appeared in structural details, such as sculpted accents over entrances, wrought iron in balustrades and hardware, mosaic designs in pavements and surfaces, arched window forms, and even garden configurations. With careful observation, hearts everywhere echoed the castle's purpose. George intentionally wove in this motif. He had already renamed the island from Heart to Heart. He had sculpted its coastline into a heart shape. Now the residence itself embodied that motif. Guests would grasp it at once. This reflected not vanity or ostentation, but enduring affection etched in enduring material. The Italianate gardens started forming in the 1901 and 1902 phases. Louise collaborated intimately with horticultural experts. She envisioned a refined continental garden aesthetic featuring symmetrical designs, trimmed borders, blooms organized in exact formations reflecting basins, sculptures sourced from Italy, and strolling routes linking various sections. A swan lake was to be fashioned on the island's western flank. Live swans would inhabit it, graceful white birds that lent poise to the scenery. The water feature included sufficient depth and flow to ensure the swans' well-being. Pavilions and verandas offered protected spots for repose. Kin and visitors could stroll the premises, linger near cascades, savor the Thousand Islands' scenic allure alongside continental landscaping finesse. Adjacent to the castle, a dovecote was envisioned, a modest aviary for doves, another layer of ornamentation, further emblems of serenity and affection. The fowl would soar across the island, nesting in the cote by evening, serving as airborne tokens that the domain celebrated harmony and calm. By autumn 1902, following 3 building campaigns, the castle's outer shell stood largely finished, encompassing all 6 levels, topped with slate shingles, fitted with panes and portals. Externally, it appeared almost complete, though the inner spaces demanded substantial effort. Wall smoothing with plaster, fitting ornate timber elements like etched surrounds, recessed shelving, embellished cornices, flooring installation varying by area, from polished stone in communal zones to timber in personal quarters. Wiring and luminaires now feasible with the power plant operational. Applying wall coverings, coloring vaults, fitting sanitary ware across numerous lavatories, followed by outfitting. Each chamber required suitable appointments, draperies, rugs, and decor. Louise had steadily gathered artifacts, acquiring objects on European sojourns, ordering bespoke creations from artisans, canvases, figurines, inlays, hangings. The castle's inner realms would display the most exquisite adornments they could obtain. The schedule stayed on track. 2 additional building years, 1903 and 1904, would suffice for finalizing the interiors and grounds. Valentine's Day in 1905 remained the goal. A bit more than 2 years were left. Costs had remained under control. The $2.5 million allocation was sufficient. Profits from the Waldorf history easily offset the outlays. Meanwhile, the Bellevue Stratford Hotel in Philadelphia was being built at the same time, a venture costing $8 million, and it was also advancing without exceeding funds. George oversaw both enormous building efforts effortlessly from a monetary standpoint. Yet Louise's condition deteriorated further. The tuberculosis verdict from 1902 had been grave, though not fatal right away. Physicians recommended relaxation, fresh atmosphere, and less pressure. The setting in the Thousand Islands ought to aid her recovery. However, come 1903, Louise appeared markedly frailer. She fatigued quickly. Strolling around the castle demanded repeated pauses. She found it hard to engage in supervising the build as vigorously as she desired. George brought on employees to manage the tasks she typically oversaw personally. Still, she demanded to stay engaged. This was her fortress, her vision. She intended to witness its full realization. Once it was complete, she assured George, she could truly recuperate. The structure would serve as their haven. She would regain her strength within its walls. George longed to trust her words. The castle neared readiness. The most demanding phases were behind them. Only refinements were pending. She could unwind shortly. All would turn out well. The spring of 1903 brought the start of the 4th building phase. With the framework sealed, internal developments accelerated. Artisans labored indoors throughout the year. The elements no longer hindered progress. Plasterers sealed the surfaces. Woodworkers fitted the paneling. Electricians finalized the circuits. The residence was turning habitable. During the 1903 summer, Louise visited the site. Despite medical warnings against journeys, she occupied spaces as they reached completion, imagining furniture placements. She endorsed choices for wall coverings. She advised on fixture positions. Such activities filled her active moments, though she required more downtime lately. Her doctor stayed nearby, observing, treating, and attempting to halt the force draining her vitality. George observed his spouse diminishing. The partner who had collaborated with him for 26 years, who had revolutionized the Bellevue and the Waldorf history, who had brimmed with vitality and creativity, now seemed delicate. Medical experts couldn't halt the decline. Wealth couldn't remedy it. The edifice, meant as a triumph, evolved into a contest with mortality. By autumn 1903, the 4th phase concluded. The castle edged toward finalization. Much of the inside was done. Decor items were being placed. Grounds enhancements were largely finished. The Swan Lake stood prepared. Plantings filled the gardens. They simply awaited growth. One final phase ahead. From spring to autumn 1904. Last adjustments, corrections, system checks, confirming flawless operation. Followed by Valentine's Day 1905. The reveal. The present delivered. George held faith that Louise would behold it. She must. 5 years of labor, 300 workers, $2.5 million, each element selected to delight her, every space crafted to her specifications, the most magnificent personal stronghold in America, constructed solely to demonstrate his devotion. She would mend. The castle would restore her. The Thousand Islands would mend her. He had erected a tribute to affection. Affection would suffice. Through the winter of 1903-1904, George and Louise went back to Manhattan to the Waldorf Astoria. Her state kept sliding, even with round-the-clock treatment. Spring 1904 ushered in the ultimate building period. Crews resumed at Hart Island. The timeline marked Valentine's Day, 1905, as the endpoint. 10 months to go, merely 10 additional months. Louise remained in Manhattan, lacking strength for the northward trip, too unwell to view the fortress she had co-created. George got updates from Hart Island. Efforts moved forward as planned. It all assembled splendidly. The castle would be set. She only had to endure. In summer 1904, Louise stayed in New York, confined to bed, with doctors ever present. George remained close whenever Waldorf Astoria responsibilities permitted. Their offspring came by, all yearning, beseeching, anticipating a turnaround that never materialized. At Hart Island, 300 laborers pressed on, oblivious, fitting the last ornaments, finalizing landscapes, refining aspects, erecting a fortress for a lady who would never witness its culmination. Louise's conception. Louise Augusta Carrer. Bolt had always transcended the role of George's spouse. She had been his collaborator, a full participant in all their achievements. When they launched the modest Bellevue Hotel in Philadelphia in 1881, Louise's creative touches ensured its triumph. The daily bouquets on dining surfaces, the gentle glow from candles, the focus on atmosphere that elevated meals to sophistication beyond basic utility. Those concepts stemmed from her, brought to life through her sense of beauty. At the Waldorf history, her impact ran just as deep, albeit with quieter recognition. George handled the business and accounts. Louise molded the guest encounter. She planned spatial arrangements. She selected materials. She set benchmarks for hospitality that ensured visitors experienced true attentiveness, not just basic lodging. In an age of rigid conventions, she grasped a groundbreaking truth. Affluent ladies sought elegant communal areas beyond their domestic spheres. Establishments like inns and eateries offered settings for ladies to connect, mingle, and wield sway. Louise intentionally crafted such venues. The Waldorf Astoria evolved into a hub for female socializing as much as for gentlemen, a novelty in Gilded Age Manhattan. Yet, crafting refined surroundings for paying patrons differed sharply from shaping one's own abode. The Bellevue and Waldorf Astoria catered to outsiders. Business demands limited selections. Personal whims couldn't override the need to attract varied patrons. Hart Island stood apart. It belonged to them alone, secluded and intimate. Louise had the freedom to craft precisely as she envisioned, free from market pressures. Her aesthetic permeated the castle's every corner. Interior configurations emphasized ease and seamless movement over sheer grandeur. Indeed, the foyer boasted majesty to welcome arrivals, but domestic areas were scaled for practical living. Sleeping quarters evoked coziness, not vast emptiness. Lounges encouraged relaxed dialogue instead of stiff posturing. She chose fabrics and surfaces with precision. Marble graced high traffic zones demanding resilience. Polished wood adorned personal retreats needing a cozy ambiance. Ceramic tiles lined wet rooms and utility spaces for straightforward upkeep. Each decision harmonized visual appeal with utility. Illumination held special significance for Louise. She had innovated thoughtful lighting at the Bellevue and Waldorf Astoria. On Hart Island, thanks to the on-site generator supplying power, she experimented with contemporary fixtures. Crystal pendants graced communal areas, bracket lights lined corridors, focus shades illuminated the study, and directed beams supported chores and utility spots. Every space glowed fittingly for its role. The building schematics incorporated intentional window designs. Louise aimed for abundant daylight across the structure. Expansive panes and orientations toward the sea delivered vistas and luminosity. More modest openings faced north to avoid glaring rays. Strategically placed vents promoted breezes while averting chills. Ornamental features revealed her refined palette. For years, she had acquired art in anticipation. European canvases, carved figures, intricate tile works destined for entryways, woven hangings for partitions, all understated and exquisite, prized for intrinsic charm over flash. She mapped out furnishing placements ahead of arrivals. Drawings outlined configurations for each chamber. Chairs clustered to foster talks, surfaces cited for utility, cabinets blended seamlessly, all elements pondered meticulously, no aspect overlooked. The grounds embodied her complete conception. George supplied the means, but Louise shaped the layout. In classic Italian mode, with precise parterres edged by clipped borders, cascades as centerpieces, marble figures guiding strolls along trails, hues schemed thoughtfully, specific blooms per plot, unfurling progressively across the warmer periods. She collaborated with garden specialists, yet she held veto power. Selections of flora, arbors, evergreens to mask unsightly views, meandering routes through the plantings, spots for seats, all delineated explicitly. The avian lake stemmed from her inspiration. The birds symbolized poise, allure, enduring legacy. Such creatures had graced continental domains for ages. She sought that refined touch at Hart Island. The basin featured suitable depth and cleansing systems. Upon finishing, the pair would arrive from abroad, residing there perpetually, or at minimum through balmy seasons when the Boltons occupied the estate. Even the boathouse, mostly George's territory given his fleet, bore Louise's imprint. Beyond mere shelter for vessels, its insides received lavish treatment, joinery executed with the same finesse as the main house, layouts optimized for order yet pleasing to the eye, racks and hooks that blended form with efficiency. Louise had devoted 26 years to fashioning inviting realms for strangers. Hart Island marked her opportunity to forge loveliness for her own circle, for George, for their kin. All selections echoed her insight into effective, evocative environments. Yet by 1902, upon learning of her grave condition, Louise's hands-on involvement waned. She retained the capacity to choose amid proposals. She could still scrutinize blueprints and endorse concepts, but traversing the grounds proved taxing. Scaling ladders to check elevated chambers lay beyond her. Her vitality ebbed. Details of her ailment stayed vague, even in period records. Certain accounts point to consumption, a frequent verdict then, virtually a fatal pronouncement absent cures. Others propose cardiac issues, perhaps from earlier rheumatic attacks, childhood trauma or advancing cardiac deterioration. Back in 1900, medical jargon and pinpoint diagnostics were rudimentary at best. Physicians noted the signs: exhaustion, shortness of breath, frailty, but pinpointing the exact origins proved elusive. Regardless of the underlying ailment, Louise's life was ebbing away. Gradually yet undeniably, she came under round-the-clock medical care. A doctor accompanied the family on their journeys. Treatments were given, probably including morphine or laudanum to ease discomfort, digitalis in case of cardiac issues, along with popular elixirs and remedies that were all the rage medically, though mostly futile. Doctors ordered bed rest, clean atmosphere, minimized anxiety, the standard advice for illnesses they lacked real cures for. The Thousand Islands were meant to provide relief. Crisp breezes, serene surroundings, a far cry from New York's frenetic pace. Louise visited Hart Island amid the 1902 and 1903 building phases, but her involvement grew more restricted over time. She lingered in unfinished spaces, imagining their polished state. She selected wallpapers from swatches delivered to her, instead of inspecting rooms on site. She chose decor from brochures and drawings, bypassing personal shopping trips. Construction pressed on, yet her role evolved from hands-on to advisory. George observed in powerless anguish. Wealth couldn't conquer this. Extra specialists made no difference. The finest healthcare of 1900 fell short against the force claiming Louise. He focused solely on her well-being and wished for her endurance until the castle's unveiling. What began as a tribute to their collaboration twisted into a frantic bid to offer her a reason to persist. If only she could last until Valentine's Day, 1905. Just 16 months beyond the summer of 1903. Witness the completed fortress, stroll its finished chambers, bask in the property's splendor, perhaps that vision might sustain her somehow. Such thinking defied logic, and George recognized it rationally. No edifice could heal illness, elegance couldn't mend declining vitality. Yet, in his heart, he held fast to the dream that this grand creation might pull her through. The yacht house on Wellesley Island awaited, rising over 50 ft tall and stretching 160 ft. It featured 3 vast boat slips, with a fourth soon added, spacious enough for George's full collection of about 70 vessels. The building was stunning. Louise had signed off on the ultimate blueprints and inner details. She had observed its progress, but regular outings there, fulfilling its purpose with summer sails, lay beyond her reach. Lucille, the 104 FT houseboat, lingered for its tailored dock. George had acquired it envisioning extended voyages amid the Thousand Islands alongside Louise. They would entertain guests aboard, navigating the waterway in luxury and ease. But Louise no longer had the strength for such adventures. The vessel symbolized aspirations crumbling with her condition. The Ulster Tower rose, finished. 90 feet of Gothic revival stone concealing contemporary comforts. Inside, the bowling lane, the billiards lounge, the shell-adorned hall for dances. Louise had joined the New York Bankers Association gala there in 1899 at its debut. She had twirled in that round chamber, but no more dances awaited her. Frailty confined her to passive repose now. The powerhouse hummed flawlessly, delivering power across the expanding grounds, its steam engine operating smoothly, bringing cutting-edge energy to a faux medieval spire. Louise had endorsed those specifications as well. She grasped the need for steady lighting and modern ease in the castle, yet she never savored it at peak performance. The Italianate gardens bloomed and settled, with patterned plots, cascading pools, meandering trails, all as Louise had envisioned. But traversing those paths eluded her. Lounging by the fountains was impossible. The landscapes she crafted offered no joy in her presence. The swan pond stood prepared for its birds. But Louise would miss their elegant drifts on the surface. She wouldn't gaze at them from the castle's panes. She wouldn't partake in the poise and allure she had orchestrated. Each facet of the Hard Island domain echoed Louise's foresight, her taste, her insight into functional areas, her precision, her demand for excellence, her pursuit of refined loveliness over ostentation. Yet, she was slipping away. The partner who had forged the Bellevue and the Waldorf Astoria with George was dimming. Now this castle unraveled their bond, not from strife or discord, but from mortality's stark reality. George could erect a fortress for her. He couldn't grant extra years. January 7th, music. January 7th, 1904, Manhattan. Louise Augusta Carnegie Bolt passed at roughly noon, age 42. 26 years wed, parent to two, architect of grand hotels, visionary behind America's grandest personal citadel. Heart failure, per the death certificate, possibly linked to tuberculosis fallout or rheumatic. The precise cause of Louise's passing, whether heart disease or a gradual decline in cardiac function, stayed a mystery in medical terms. The outcome didn't change. She had departed. George stayed by her side at the end, along with the kids, George Jr., then 24, and Clover, 20, both doctors on hand. No further interventions possible. They had eased her discomfort through drugs, yet in 1904, that's all treatments could achieve. The relatives had anticipated this turn. Louise had lingered in bed for weeks, her condition worsening bit by bit. Even so, the precise instant brought a jolt, shifting from life to lifelessness, from being there to vanished, from present to absent. No matter how foreseen, demise catches one off guard. George's prompt response showed his inner turmoil. Just hours after Louise's demise, he dispatched a wire to Hard Island. The note was concise. Cease building operations, 300 meters north. The crew on Hard Island got the dispatch that same afternoon or night. Tech for messaging sped things up, though winter weather hindered transport. A few laborers might have heard the news only the next morning, but the directive was firm. Halt all building right away. Stonecutters set aside their tools. Woodworkers left their blades behind. Artists with brushes halted, cans of color left open. Wiring experts paused during setups. Garden designers stepped back from half-done landscapes. 300 individuals laid down implements and vacated the site. Not for a break or till warmer months, indefinitely. The fortress reached about 90% completion. The outside shell was fully realized. Every one of the 6 levels, every spire, the rooftop fitted, panes and entrances secured. Much of the inside was executed. Surfaces coated, surfaces installed, a good portion of the carpentry in place. Certain spaces were fully equipped, while others awaited minor refinements. The power facility ran smoothly. The boat shelter was set. The altar spire had wrapped up years before. The grounds were cultivated, the Swan Lake was ready, awaiting its birds. The Parisal Gateway soared impressively by the shore. 4.5 years of effort, $2.5 million poured in, countless thousands of hours from expert hands. America's grandest personal stronghold almost primed for residents, all crafted for Louise. The reveal on Valentine's Day loomed 13 months off, February 14, 1905. One additional building phase would have sealed it. But Louise was no more. The stronghold was meant for her. Devoid of her, it lost its point. George commanded a full stop on the work and stuck to that call. He never stepped onto Hard Island once more. This detail surfaces in nearly all tales of Bolt Castle, even if a few papers from the era hinted at possible short trips in subsequent years. Yet the prevailing lore insists George stayed away post-Louise's passing. True in the strictest sense, or broadly so, he undoubtedly never resided there, never wrapped it up, never employed it as planned. That wire ending the build has evolved into the heartfelt core of the Bolt Castle narrative. The instant those 300 laborers set tools aside, when the vision cut short suddenly, when the tribute to affection turned into affection's memorial. Certain versions embellish it romantically. George, overwhelmed by sorrow, found it unbearable to press on. The stronghold sans Louise held no value. He forsook it as an ultimate act of loyalty. Alternative views see it more practically. Scholar Paul Moe argues in Bolt Castle, In Search of the Lost Story, that Louise fueled the initiative chiefly. George bankrolled it and handled arrangements, but it stemmed from her dream. With her gone, no cause remained to push forward on what she desired, which he had simply enabled. A different angle. Expenses were mounting wildly. The venture had eaten $2.5 million, with yet another phase required. George might have seized Louise's death to justify ending a venture whose costs he was doubting more and more. Such perspectives needn't clash. George truly mourned deeply. Sources from the time leave no doubt. Louise had shared his life for 26 years. All he had erected, he had raised alongside her. Her loss shattered him, yet he remained level-headed. The stronghold aimed to delight Louise. Louise had passed. Wrapping it up wouldn't restore her. Pouring in several 100,000 more for a structure he'd never inhabit seemed pointless. Sorrow and sense could align. Regardless of his precise motives, the effect was plain. Building ceased. The stronghold remained frozen as of January 7, 1904. George dove back into duties at the Waldorf Astoria soon after. Obligations awaited, staff relied on him, commerce demanded focus. Mourning couldn't derail the running of America's top hotel. He also oversaw the Bellevue Stratford. That establishment launched in 1904, right as Louise slipped away. It needed guidance to thrive amid Philadelphia's fierce lodging scene. George immersed in his tasks. The other path meant dwelling on the void. Duties supplied direction, diversion, routine. He'd forever been a worker. He worked with even greater intensity now. Yet he kept returning to the Thousand Islands every summer, not to the forsaken Hard Island, but to Wellesley Island, where he oversaw the farms and various estates. For years, those summers had been his ritual. He refused to forsake the whole area just because Hard Island evoked sorrow. George Jr. and Clover pitched in with the family enterprises. George Jr. was studying at Cornell University, where his father served as a trustee, though he lent a hand in hotel operations over vacations. At 20, Clover grasped the intricacies of business, even if women seldom received official positions back then. The family adapted to life without Louise, as such households often do. Daily routines persisted, existence moved forward, yet a core element had shattered irrevocably. The collaboration that had forged their success was lost forever. Louise found her final rest at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. George would join her there upon his passing 12 years hence, but that lay far ahead. Come January 1904, George was 52, immensely prosperous and profoundly isolated. 300 meters north on Hard Island, the castle loomed vacant. Its windows gazed upon the iced-over river. Uncompleted rooms lingered in limbo. Gardens lay dormant, awaiting a spring that would fail to summon laborers. Tools rested untouched where they had fallen. The structure would endure in that state for 73 years, neglected and crumbling. It stood as a testament not to love realized, but to affection cut short, not a completed offering, but a vow severed by mortality. George Bolt had erected a castle for his wife. She never witnessed its completion, nor did he finalize it in her honor. The telegram had conveyed the essential command, "Halt all building." And for 73 years, nothing stirred on Hart Island save the breeze, the waves, and the passage of time. The extended desolation. Hart Island, January 1904. The castle remained hushed. The crew had vanished. Building gear stayed put. Scaffolds, kits, and hoarded supplies for tasks eternally postponed. Snow piled on the half-formed masonry. Frost gathered in the basin ponds that Louise had envisioned. The island bided its time for a thaw that brought no revival. George Bolt persisted in his Thousand Island summers. He steered clear of Hart Island. Most records indicate he never set foot there again, and instead tended his Wellesley Island holdings. He upheld those lands, kept the golf course, polo grounds, and leased cabins running smoothly. The Thousand Islands had long served as his seasonal haven. Louise's passing didn't alter that completely. It merely rendered Hart Island untouchable. From Wellesley Island, Hart lay near enough that the castle silhouette was discernible over the bay, an ever-present emblem of his creation and its stalled fate. If that nearness tormented or soothed him, or some blend of both, George kept it private. He pressed on with managing the Waldorf Astoria and the Bellevue Stratford. Both establishments thrived exceptionally. His fortune, far from waning, swelled further. The hotel network that he and Louise had jointly established operated seamlessly in her absence. George upheld his charitable efforts. He had long championed youth pursuing higher learning. Accounts indicate he quietly financed university for at least 75 pupils throughout his days. He aided staffers in tough financial spots. He contributed to causes Louise favored, perpetuating her legacy via sustained generosity. Yet, he never addressed Hart Island openly, never mentioned the castle, never justified halting the work. That chapter of his existence was sealed shut. On December 5, 1916, George endured a heart seizure in his Waldorf Astoria quarters. He perished that same day at 65, 12 years post-Louise. His service drew massive crowds. Fifth Avenue gridlock halted for the cortege from the Waldorf Astoria to the chapel. Pallbearers featured America's elite, tycoons, statesmen, social luminaries. The New York Times obit hailed him as the prime architect of the contemporary U.S. hotel industry. He was interred at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx, next to Louise. His holdings tallied about $15 million, equivalent to around $400 million in modern terms. The testament split the inheritance evenly between George Jr. and Clover, urging them to sustain his backed philanthropies. George Jr. and Clover came into possession of the castle, along with the dilemma of its disposition. Neither cared to finish it. The endeavor embodied their parents' vision, not their own. Completing the edifice wouldn't revive their mother. It would merely drain funds on upkeep for a site they planned to ignore. In 1918, 2 years following George's demise, the pair offloaded Hart Island. The purchaser was Edward John Noble, an entrepreneur from nearby Gouverneur, New York. Noble ran the Beechnut Packing Company and had amassed riches via a clever stake in Lifesavers Candy. He was expanding ventures in the Thousand Islands area and spotted potential in snagging the renowned castle. Noble shelled out an undisclosed sum for Hart Island. Certain reports indicate the sale price was far less than the building expenses, possibly just a couple $100,000 for a site that had required $2.5 million. However, the fortress remained unfinished and had sat deserted for 14 years, making its worth difficult to assess. Noble entertained loose ideas for turning Hart Island into a business venture, perhaps a lodging spot or getaway, or even a draw for sightseers. The structure already enjoyed widespread recognition. Media outlets had reported at length on its building and subsequent desertion. The public showed keen interest in it. That intrigue might have been turned into profit. Yet Noble refrained from funding any finishing touches or meaningful repairs. Rather, he permitted casual visits to Hart Island. Charter boat services could ferry guests over. Folks were free to roam the premises and wander through the vacant halls. There was no entry charge, only permission to enter. This choice of granting entry without adequate safeguards or upkeep ultimately spelled ruin for the castle's state. In the ensuing years, spanning multiple decades, Hart Island endured three key threats to its survival: the elements, deliberate damage, and scavenging removals. The climate showed no mercy. The Thousand Islands region faces brutal cold seasons. Deep snow builds up, frost coats surfaces, the St. Lawrence River turns solid, generating forces that pound vulnerable buildings. Gusts rip at coverings. Moisture infiltrates cracks, then solidifies and swells, splitting rock and binding material. The edifice had never received complete protection. Panes were fitted in places, though certain areas stayed raw. Not every entrance boasted secure fastenings. Fluids penetrated with ease. Season upon season, frost built up within chambers, widening fissures, shattering coatings, twisting timber features. Ceilings sprang drips, drainage systems buckled, flood harm extended. The generator building took a severe hit. In 1939, embers from a fireworks event set the timber framing ablaze. The blaze consumed all burnable parts, sparing just the masonry frame. For years following, the facility lingered as a charred wreck among the island's most strikingly ravaged features. Acts of defacement hastened the breakdown, absent patrols, supervision, or penalties. Guests viewed the place as a play area and blank slate. Scribbles adorned surfaces, initials, years, notes etched across every spot. Some carved into coatings, others applied with color. Layers of markings from years piled up, countless declarations of presence etched in. Individuals shattered glass on purpose, shattered ornaments, punched openings in barriers. Young people hosted gatherings there, discarding containers, litter, and wreckage. The harm came offhand, careless. Folks harming an object simply because it was possible, with nobody intervening. More severe than defacement proved the pilfering. Any worthwhile and movable item vanished. Brass tubing and cabling got ripped away. Brass fetched a price on the market. Ornamental fittings got wrenched from panels and barriers. Sculpted lumber pieces were taken down. Flooring squares were pried loose. Lighting units disappeared. Entry mechanisms, frame attachments, any golden or alloy components swiped. Amid World War II in 1942, Hart Island underwent a thorough dismantling of its ferrous and alloy parts to support the conflict. The materials were allegedly vital for armament production. Laborers extracted support rods, framework pieces, ornamental ferrous details. This extraction compromised sections of the build, aiding the eventual downfall of specific areas. The manicured Italian landscapes that Louise had crafted fell into disarray. Lacking care, invasive plants choked the planting zones. Bushes sprawled unchecked, water features fractured and clogged with refuse. Sculptures fell over or were carted off. Walkways vanished beneath foliage. The meticulously arranged elegant grounds dissolved into untamed brush. The water basin for swans turned foul. No birds of that type ever arrived. It became choked with growth and decayed foliage. Over time, it reduced to a soggy hollow, holding pooled liquid. The vessel shelter on Wellesley Island held up a bit more. Being easier to reach and sometimes utilized, it still fell apart from lack of attention. The covering dripped, panes shattered, the inside wore down, the altar tower endured though marred. The lane for skittles inundated. The chamber for shells saw its adornments targeted, glass got bashed. Yet the spire's core stability persisted. Its angled sides and quirky design actually aided its endurance compared to standard builds. Into the 1950s and 60s, Hart Island evolved into an eerie remnant. Images from those times depict a fortress seeming forsaken for ages, not mere years. Disintegrating barriers, plants sprouting from fissures in masonry, vacant openings gazing like hollow orbits. The picturesque deterioration drew artists with cameras and visitors drawn to decayed sites. A few deemed it lovely in its unfinished form. A medieval leftover, a tribute to vanished affection, the tangible form of sorrow. George's shattered spirit rendered in fractured masonry. Such sentiment overlooked the tangible truth. The edifice was crumbling from disregard. Edward Noble passed away in 1958. His organization took over Hart Island. They kept permitting visitor entry, yet poured no funds. Efforts to maintain the castle faltered, its decline sped up dramatically. During the 1970s, experts in structural engineering issued alerts that certain sections of the castle posed serious safety risks. Certain walls teetered precariously. Some floors threatened to give way. The site edged closer to the brink where demolition might outpace any rescue attempts. The E.J. Noble Foundation hesitated to pour millions into repairs, yet they acknowledged the castle's importance for history and drawing tourists. They started looking for a group willing to assume control of Hart Island, safeguard it, and turn it into a visitor site. In 1977, they identified a suitable partner, the Thousand Islands Bridge Authority. This binational entity oversaw the bridges linking the U.S. and Canada over the St. Lawrence River. Income from tolls sustained their operations, but their goals also encompassed boosting economic growth in the Thousand Islands area. Tourism played a key role in the local economy. Even as ruins, Bolt Castle pulled in crowds. A revitalized version could emerge as a prime draw, funneling visitors to the area and sparking business. The Bridge Authority spotted the possibilities. Talks moved forward. The Noble Foundation offered to hand over the property for next to nothing, often noted as $1, provided certain terms were met. The Bridge Authority would run Bolt Castle as a not-for-profit site. Proceeds from entry fees, guided tours, and connected events would go solely toward upkeep and fixes. No public funds would support it. The castle had to sustain itself fully. The Bridge Authority signed on. On the surface, it seemed a gamble. They were taking on a badly damaged asset that demanded millions in work, with no assurance of returns. Still, the prospective boost to the Thousand Islands economy made it worthwhile. That autumn in 1977, the handover occurred. The Thousand Islands Bridge Authority took possession of Hart Island and the entire Bolt Castle setup. They promptly launched an assessment of the steps needed to secure and revive the buildings. The findings were grim. 73 years of neglect had wrought widespread havoc. The powerhouse stood as a charred husk. Water had ravaged the primary castle building inside and out. Plaster peeled away from walls. Timber floors decayed steadily. Nearly every window lay shattered. Cracks spiderwebbed the stonework. Metal supports rusted through. The grounds choked with unchecked vegetation. Initial cost projections hit $15 million, covering only the basics of shoring up and partial revival. Bringing it back to George Bolt's full dream could demand far higher sums. The Bridge Authority knew they'd have to build strong earnings to cover it. They planned Hart Island's relaunch for the spring of 1978, not as a polished gem, which would require years, but as an ongoing project. Guests could witness the site's rough state and grasp the scale of the revival effort. They could track improvements season by season amid the continuous labor. The promotional strategy stayed straightforward. Here's a relic in the midst of salvage. Witness the safeguarding of the past. Your ticket price fuels the revival directly. You're not merely touring a fortress, you're aiding its salvation. In the spring of 1978, Hart Island welcomed the public again under the Bridge Authority's stewardship. That debut year drew 99,000 visitors, exceeding the authority's forecasts by a wide margin. The blend of the castle's poignant backstory and the tangible revival efforts sparked massive curiosity. Earnings from that initial run addressed urgent needs, bracing at-risk structures against falls, patching the most critical roof breaches, setting up simple safeguards, and taming the wildest overgrowth. Changes were evident. Tourists spotted scaffolds, crews tackling repairs on live sections, and steady advancements. The next year, attendance climbed higher. Greater income enabled expanded repairs. A positive loop took hold. Enhanced work lured even more crowds, yielding funds for further enhancements. Into the early 1980s, clear strides emerged. Ground-level chambers in the central castle underwent renewal. Surviving blueprints, old photos, and leftover supplies from 1904 offered direction. Artisans recreated George and Louise's intent, outfitting spaces to match what they might have been in 1905. The approach to revival carried depth. Select rooms got full treatment, polished, decorated, displayed in their intended form. Others stayed partially raw on purpose, revealing building techniques, retaining old markings as artifacts, letting sightseers envision the unrealized potential. Upper levels, like the third and fourth, stayed mostly incomplete. This choice aligned with the narrative. Bolt Castle's allure stemmed from its halted state. George's sorrow etched in stone forever. Louise's void laid bare. The powerhouse rose anew, not to full extent. Its insides shifted into something else. Rather than serving as a practical power plant, the area was transformed into a display gallery. Still, the outer facade underwent careful revival, fixing the scars from the blaze and reinstating its striking design. The boathouse demanded major efforts, including foundational fixes, a fresh covering overhead, and updated panes. In time, it welcomed back guests, now featuring a display of vintage vessels contributed by the Antique Boat Museum, located in Clayton, New York. These crafts offered guests insights into the maritime traditions of the Thousand Islands region back in the Gilded Age. The landscapes were methodically revived, steering clear of a precise copy of Louise's initial designs. After 73 years of neglect, exact duplication proved unfeasible, yet they crafted elegant Italian-style gardens aligned with her vision. Water features in the pools got mended and replenished, bushes were set in place and shaped, planting areas for blooms were laid out, sculptures were mended or reproduced. Efforts to revive the site persist even now. More than 40 years since the Bridge Authority assumed control, projects keep advancing. Roughly $38 million has gone into it, drawn solely from ticket sales without any public support. Annually, portions get upgraded, chambers get refurbished, and the estate gets polished. Guest numbers have climbed consistently, starting from 99,000 in 97 and reaching beyond 200,000 during busy periods. Bolt Castle stands as one of the top 25 historic homes, drawing crowds across the United States. From mid-May to mid-October during the active months, Hart Island draws crowds by the thousands each day. The fortress George constructed for Louise sat forsaken for 73 years, ravaged by disuse and almost torn down as beyond repair. Yet, it endured, not owing to George's wishes nor the attempts of his offspring, but because outsiders saw the worth in certain landmarks, no matter their creators or purposes. George Bolt stayed away from Hart Island following January 7, 1904. He erected a palace for his spouse and abandoned the project incomplete after her passing. His sorrow drove that choice. However, sorrow doesn't dictate the end. Today, the structure rises not in the state George abandoned, crumbling and forlorn, but as a different symbol altogether. Indeed, a tribute to affection, but likewise to endurance, to the worth of safeguarding history, to the notion that forsaken beauties can find new life. George and Louise never resided within their creation, yet countless visitors have explored it. The present he envisioned for a single soul now benefits everyone. Revival. In 1977, Hart Island faced a pivotal moment: preserve it or allow its demise. The Thousand Islands Bridge Authority had taken charge, vowed to rebuild, and pledged that all proceeds from entry fees would support upkeep. Yet the extent of ruin was overwhelming. 7 decades plus 3 years of desertion brought exposure to elements, deliberate harm, pilfering, flames, crumbling foundations, and moisture ruin everywhere. The initial hurdle centered on security. Prior to public entry, the authority had to guarantee no risks to guests. Shaky barriers got shored up, risky surfaces required bolstering or blockades to bar entry, unfastened masonry needed fastening. A full evaluation of the grounds pinpointed all threats. Through the cold months of 1977-78, teams tackled urgent safeguards, installing interim covers over badly leaking spots, adding braces against impending falls, and erecting barriers near the riskiest zones. The aim wasn't full revival at that point, merely halting added decay and rendering the area secure for limited tours. By the thaw of 1978, Hart Island threw open its doors again, far from a sleek draw for tourists, but as a candid site of ongoing labor. Guests wandered amid the wreckage, witnessing the full toll of 73 years' disregard. Scrawls marred the surfaces, coatings peeled off to bare the underlying brick and rock, bare openings where glass once stood, scarred levels, wild overgrowth in the yards, yet alongside, crews toiled on fixes. Frameworks climbed the structures, artisans mended the masonry, supplies waited for upcoming tasks, and tangible advances showed. The signal to those entering was unmistakable. Efforts are underway to rescue this place. Your entry fee powers these fixes directly. Return in a year's time to witness the gains. That strategy paid off. The debut period brought 99,000 guests, surpassing forecasts. Earnings supported ongoing safeguards along with early revivals of key areas. The ground-level reception space claimed first attention. After all, it greeted arrivals right away. Rendering it grand would highlight the fortress's promise. The guiding principle for revival took shape quickly. This wouldn't involve mere recreation or fresh visions. The target lay in realizing George Bolt's blueprint, drawing on his authentic blueprints. Luckily, the Hewitt brothers' design sketches had endured. Images from the building phase remained. Supplies abandoned there in 1904, untapped flooring pieces, fittings, ornamental bits, offered tangible guides to the planned aesthetics. Artisans pored over these aids with care. For any chamber's revival, they mirrored the exact directives. Where sketches indicated unique flooring designs, those motifs got remade. If old photos displayed certain wall coverings, equivalents were sourced. The process resembled excavation, unearthing the core aims and bringing them to fruition, though not uniformly. Certain chambers were intentionally kept. The upper levels, specifically the third and fourth floors, were mostly left in their neglected state. Vast areas revealed bare frameworks, with graffiti intact and unpolished building elements on display. This approach fulfilled several objectives. Primarily, it was pragmatic. Outfitting all 120 rooms to match the era's standards would have demanded expenditures in the tens of millions. The Bridge Authority had to weigh their goals for revival against limited resources. Prioritizing key visitor areas for completion proved sensible. Keeping secondary zones incomplete aligned with fiscal prudence. Additionally, it enhanced the narrative. Those bare chambers on the third floor conveyed the halt in progress more vividly than a full refurbishment ever could. Strolling from the polished ground level to the stark upper stories made the sudden cessation feel immediate and real. Finally, it honored genuineness. Bolt Castle's essence derived from its incomplete status. George had never finished it. Finishing it today would diminish that legacy. The preservation group recognized that partiality formed the site's core significance. Certain spaces ought to stay as George abandoned them. Efforts ceased, aspirations cut short, rebuilding the powerhouse started promptly. The 1939 blaze had gutted the roof and insides, sparing just the masonry walls. The Bridge Authority reconstructed the roof, returned the outside to its pre-fire appearance, and transformed the inside into a gallery area. Informational boards detailed how steam-powered units generated power during the early 1900s. Archival images depicted the building phase. Thus, the powerhouse evolved into both a revived structure and an informative venue. The boathouse on Wellesley Island demanded major reinforcements. Its metal skeleton remained sturdy thanks to solid 1900s design. Yet, all other components required overhaul. A fresh roof, swapped windows, fixed doors, plus thorough interior scrubbing and resurfacing. After ensuring stability, it was equipped with vintage vessels borrowed from the Antique Boat Museum in Clayton. These displays helped guests grasp Bolt's armada and the broader boating traditions of the Thousand Islands. Reviving the gardens posed arguably the toughest hurdles. 7 decades of neglect had erased Louise's initial landscapes. Overgrowth had invaded floral plots. Boundary shrubs had vanished completely. Water features lay in ruins. Trails had faded away. The grounds team couldn't merely revive. They needed to rebuild using vintage photos and accounts. They started with basics, fixing basin structures to retain water, reconstructing walkways, and adding suitable runoff systems. Next, they tackled greenery, avoiding precise copies of Louise's selections since documentation was incomplete. Instead, they crafted formal Italian-inspired layouts in line with her vision. Precise plots, compact borders outlining sections, and blooms arranged for hue harmony and year-round interest. Progress was gradual. Landscapes demand patience to flourish. Borders take years to thicken. Saplings need decades for full stature, yet each cycle brought visible advances. Roots sharpened in clarity. Plots gained form. The estate started evoking the sophistication Louise had dreamed of. Interior work advanced room by room in a systematic fashion. In the initial year, the foyer, and a couple of ground-level chambers. The next year, more ground-floor areas. The third year, venturing into the second floor. Every space took months of labor from expert artisans. Plaster experts mended surfaces with era-specific methods and supplies. Carpenters recreated ornate features damaged by vandals or pilfered. Wiring specialists fitted authentic-style lamps, not the lost originals, but precise replicas. Flooring pros refurbished or swapped out harmed timber and tiles. Decorators replicated hues from chemical paint studies. Windows presented special difficulties. Numerous were shattered or absent. Bespoke panes had to be commissioned, mirroring dimensions, designs, and even the minor flaws of 1900s glass production. Fittings were duplicated from extant samples. Each pane amounted to bespoke craftsmanship. Outfitting the revived interiors involved deep investigation and sourcing. The Bolt's furnishings had disappeared long ago, looted, ruined, or auctioned. The team drew on era photos to pinpoint styles Louise favored. Then they scoured for true period items. From vintage vendors, auctions, and museum loans, every chamber received authentic Gilded Age pieces suited to its purpose. By the mid-1980s, the ground level stood mostly renewed. Guests could explore the foyer, parlors, and banquet hall, all crafted to resemble what George and Louise might have known had the estate wrapped up in 1905. The deliberate disparity with the higher levels created a striking effect. The second floor progressed similarly across the late 1980s and 1990s. Private sleeping quarters revived, washrooms equipped with vintage plumbing, lounges appointed. Not all spaces, the estate boasts 120, but sufficient rooms have been arranged on the first floor to illustrate the daily life of the Bolt family. Upstairs, you'll find the souvenir store and a screening room. In the theater, a short film explores the life of George Bolt and Louise, along with the building's creation, its eventual desertion, and the dedicated revival projects. Lasting around 16 minutes, the movie offers essential background that helps guests appreciate the site they're exploring. Attendance rose consistently during the 1980s and 1990s, drawing 100,000 people each year turned into the norm. Come 2000, Bolt Castle was pulling in more than 200,000 guests per season, which spanned 6 months from mid-May to mid-October, when the St. Lawrence River allows safe passage and conditions support the site's activities. The boost to the Thousand Islands area's economy proved massive. Tourists flocking to Bolt Castle filled nearby inns, dined at eateries, checked out additional sites, and browsed local shops. It emerged as the central draw fueling tourism across the region. The 1977 decision by the bridge officials to invest turned out to be a smart financial move. Earnings kept supporting the upkeep and enhancements. By 2000, roughly $15 million had gone into the effort. That figure climbed past $30 million by 2010, and by 2020, it neared $40 million. Every bit of income from entry fees, after covering daily expenses, circled right back into conservation and upgrades. No public money, no subsidies, no contributions from outside sources were needed. The castle essentially revived itself solely on what visitors paid to enter. This approach stood out in the world of heritage conservation, showing that large-scale revivals could pay for themselves if the place drew enough crowds. The revival work persists right now. It never really pauses. Routine care goes on without end. Roofing demands fixes, masonry calls for fresh mortar, surfaces require repainting. Fresh initiatives launch all the time. The Olmsted Tower is in the midst of a 15-year overhaul. The fountain along the waterway is being rebuilt to match the initial blueprint. Progress shows up noticeably with each passing year. Certain features won't ever reach full completion. The passageways linking the structures stay raw. There's no intention to lay down the rail lines George had in mind for the trolley. A few rooms high up will remain bare. The estate will forever feel somewhat unfinished by design. That partial state shares the tale itself. Yet the sections brought back to life are stunning. The primary building's lower levels shine with splendor. The power station rises impressively once more. The boathouse operates flawlessly. The grounds bloom with refined beauty. The whole property echoes the splendor that George and Louise once dreamed of. Hart Island runs on a seasonal schedule today. It opens mid-May and shuts down mid-October. In those months, reaching it means taking a water route exclusively. Outfitters offer frequent excursions from Alexandria Bay and nearby towns. Owners of personal vessels can tie up and come ashore. A ferry connects Hart Island to the boathouse on Wellesley Island. Come summer, the island hires about 60 temporary workers. They handle tickets, lead tours, handle repairs, staff the store, tend the lawns, run the snack area at the Olmsted Tower, and provide security. It's a big undertaking. Coordinating 200,000 guests a year calls for solid setup. Nuptials have turned into a key earner. Bolt Castle ranks high among New York State's favored spots for ceremonies. More than 100 weddings happen there yearly on Hart Island. Pairs tie the knot in the Italian-style gardens, the Olmsted Tower, or other enchanting spots scattered throughout the grounds. What started as a tribute to George and Louise's romance now hosts countless others exchanging vows. The twist runs deep. George crafted this haven for just one person, a secluded, intimate present meant for her eyes alone. Today, hundreds of thousands pass through yearly. Thousands of pairs have wed on the premises. The ultimate private expression evolved into a grand public landmark. But maybe that's appropriate. Romance ought to shine openly. The collaboration between George and Louise, erecting inns side by side, crafting loveliness as a team, backing one another's visions, was extraordinary. Their journey merits telling far and wide. The castle brings it vividly to life. The Thousand Islands Bridge Authority has shown itself as an outstanding guardian. They embraced a dilapidated shell that experts deemed beyond saving and turned it into one of the nation's top historic attractions. They achieved this with no state support, no rich backers, just steady oversight and deep respect for the site's importance. Reviving Bolt Castle stands as a triumph in preservation. A structure left to rot for 73 years, eyed for probable teardown, got rescued and polished into a vibrant community asset. The strategy could inspire similar efforts elsewhere. Old landmarks sustaining their own care via gate receipts, provided they pull in big enough audiences. But Bolt Castle's true draw stems from its compelling saga. The newcomer who washed dishes rising to hotel magnate. The duo with his spouse forging a vast enterprise. The fortress erected as the pinnacle of affection. The abrupt loss that halted it all. The long stretch of neglect. The ultimate salvation. That arc strikes a chord on a personal level, far beyond mere tales of structural past. Visitors flock to Bolt Castle not merely for its architecture, but equally for the tale it embodies. They yearn to tread the paths once walked by George and Louise, to linger in chambers crafted by Louise's vision, to sense the sorrow of an unrealized dream, to embrace the allure of its revival. The team handling the revival grasped this essence. They went beyond mere repairs on a structure. They safeguarded a legacy. Each choice prioritized storytelling precision. Completed areas reveal the original blueprint. Incomplete sections highlight the sudden halt. Landscaped grounds convey elegance. Remnants of decay recognize hardship. Altogether, the property weaves a full narrative: aspiration, affection, sorrow, neglect, salvation, renewal. Today, Bolt Island stands as something George Bolt could scarcely have foreseen: a communal tribute to an intimate romance. A fortress erected for a single lady, now explored by multitudes. A present halted by mortality, fulfilled by outsiders. A vision forsaken in mourning, revived by those unfamiliar with its originators. George halted the building on January 7, 1904. The Thousand Islands Bridge Authority resumed efforts on May 20, 1978, spanning 74 years. Yet the labor George initiated, successors brought to fruition, not precisely per his blueprint, but in manners that respect his aims while fulfilling unforeseen roles. The fortress endures. That's the core. George constructed it for Louise. Society preserved it for its own sake. These drives, devotion and conservation, both hold value. Both find tribute at Bolt Island now. What endures? Bolt Island's current visitor period. Vessels ferry sightseers from Alexandria Bay. The waterway arrival is striking, just as George envisioned. The fortress looms over the foliage, its spires spotted from afar. The rose-hued granite shimmers under the sun. As ships draw closer to the isle, its grandeur hits home. It's enormous, authentic, enduring. Guests tie up at the shoreline. The majority come on guided excursions. Uncle tours in similar outfits offer frequent sailings. Personal yachts may call too. Ample piers handle recreational vessels. All proceed ashore by Shanks Mare. No cars allowed, only trails linking various edifices. The peristyle arch greets at the shore, even if the drawbridge never got fully fitted. Guests pass by it, making for the primary fortress. The route is surfaced and kept tidy. Floral displays flank the trail, echoing Louise's Italianate formal design, now revived and tended. Blossoms, shrubs, water features. During peak season, it all flourishes. The estate gleams spotless. The chief fortress portal lies at ground level. Sightseers pass through hefty timber portals into the vast foyer. This area stands fully realized, surfaces coated and colored, base covered in mosaic flooring, trim sculpted and placed, lamps suspended. A grand stairway ascends to higher levels. The foyer appears ready for 1905 occupancy. On the right side, the parlor and banquet chamber, both meticulously revived, furnishings positioned true to the time. Artwork adorns the panels, drapes frame the panes, rugs cover the bases. These areas illustrate George and Louise's aspirations, refined yet not ostentatious. Cozy over mere grandeur, spots meant for genuine family and company gatherings. To the left, more ground-level chambers, such as the study and cozy lounges. Once more, entirely polished. Guests may stroll inside, glimpsing Gilded-Age domestic life. Barriers keep items safe. No handling the pieces, but peering in reveals intricacies, sparks visions of inhabitants. Across the ground level, subtle hearts emerge in accents, etched in trim, shaped in mosaics, molded in hardware. Nothing flashy or blatant unless sought out, but spotting the motif unveils them ubiquitously. George's emblem threaded through each detail. The upper level features sleeping quarters and intimate areas. The Bolt's principal sleeping wing is renewed. Spacious chamber, lounge nook, secluded bath with era-true fittings. George Jr. and Clover's rooms are outfitted suitably for the period's youth. Spare chambers depict guest comforts. The lavatories intrigue today's explorers especially. Several full-service baths with advanced pipes marked opulence in 1900. Chinaware, mosaic surfaces, brass lines, all set for contemporary ease. The fortress would have rivaled the Waldorf Astoria in tech. This level also includes the merchandise outlet and screening room. The theater presents a film on the site's backstory. Guests should view it prior to wandering. It adds depth that enriches the tour. The outlet offers tomes on Bolt Castle, cards, mementos. Proceeds fund upkeep. Higher levels, the third and fourth, remain mostly raw. Intentionally so. Certain spaces sit vacant, naked partitions, visible beams, some panes unglazed. Others retain scrawls from years of neglect, initials, years, notes etched by intruders during the site's forsaken days. The revival crew retained these traces. Historical records offer valuable insights throughout the site. Traversing the vacant upper levels delivers a vivid juxtaposition, the polished sophistication downstairs against the crude unfinishedness overhead. The shift feels abrupt. It hits you right away what halting construction entailed. These levels reveal the tasks left undone, the chambers Louise never decorated, the areas George never witnessed finished. Certain upper spaces feature display boards that detail building methods, feature old photos, and outline initial designs. The incomplete sections serve as educational zones, helping guests learn about the castle's construction process and the ambitions behind it. The lower level remains largely raw. The kitchen zone is somewhat developed, pantry areas sit vacant, the pool exists, bare, never used, merely a sunken concrete basin, utility areas and service rooms, the corridors linking to adjacent structures, dim tunnels that tourists explore on lead tours, discovering the concealed systems George planned. Beyond the building, the Italianate gardens have been revived in their structured splendor, with patterned floral arrangements, working fountains, cascading water into basins, sculptures placed along trails, shrubs sculpted neatly, and meandering paths that offer glimpses of various sections. Seats invite people to pause and absorb the scenery. The Swan Lake operates once more. Actual swans reside there in the warmer seasons, elegant and white, just as Louise pictured them. They drift over the surface, lounge on the shores, and now and then circle the isle in flight. These creatures enhance the property's vibrant charm. Nearby the castle stands the dovecote. Pigeons occupy it, fluttering across the property and nesting back home, realizing Louise's dream. The fowl contribute motion and calls to the setting. Soft coos, flapping feathers, vitality pulsing amid the majestic design. The Olana Tower continues as one of the property's most captivating features. Guests can explore it, viewing the bowling lane in the sublevel, the game room higher up, the reading room, sleeping quarters, and the seashell alcove at the summit. The tower receives ongoing refurbishment, yet remains open. A snack bar inside offers simple meals and beverages. People can relax in the shell alcove, gazing through panes at the St. Lawrence River, picturing the gatherings George and Louise might have held. The power station, restored on the outside, contains exhibits within. Information boards describe the operation of steam engines, the generation and delivery of power. Vintage images depict building phases and early machinery. The facility highlights the advanced engineering. George demanded cutting-edge energy setups within a Gothic-inspired framework. The boat garage on Wellesley Island is reachable by ferry service every 30 minutes in season. The edifice is striking. Rising over 50 feet, it includes 3 vast slips facing the river. Within, classic wooden vessels are showcased, borrowed from the antique boat collection. These range from tiny skiffs to sizable engine-powered ones, illustrating the diversity in George's fleet. One slip once housed Ladushka, the 104-foot houseboat. That craft is absent now from the site. It appears instead at the Antique Boat Museum in Clayton, yet images and accounts convey its dimensions and opulence. George meant it for lengthy voyages across the Thousand Islands alongside relatives and friends. The boat garage underscores the extent of George's nautical pursuits. Accounts suggest he possessed more than 70 boats. The facility could handle crafts up to 128 feet. This went beyond a casual pastime. It reflected a dedicated seafaring passion supported by extensive facilities across the grounds. Display signs deliver details on history, background, building specifics, family history, planned elements versus actual outcomes, the halt and revival narrative. Guests may wander independently or opt for led excursions offering more insight. Snapping photos is welcome. The site brims with picturesque spots from all directions. Pairs capture bridal shots. Groups snap holiday memories. Creators draw and illustrate. The fortress and surrounds offer infinite scenic appeal. The property runs from mid-May to mid-October. Daily times usually span 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., with longer stretches in high summer. Shutdown proceeds slowly. Come late October, cooler air arrives, frost starts to build, and keeping open grows unfeasible. Workers dedicate the late autumn to safeguarding gear against cold snaps, locking up structures, readying for the dormant period. In peak times, the isle buzzes with activity. Vessels pull in often. At times, several arrive together, unloading crowds onto the land. The store and eatery fill up. Queues build at favored viewpoints. Busy summer days hit maximum crowds. Yet, even amid the bustle, the site retains its allure. The expansive lawns ensure no sense of overload. Green spaces create serene nooks. Scattered structures disperse the flow. Solitude emerges even in the throng. These are hectic days. It's astounding how well the castle has been kept up. After 73 years of neglect and the destruction it endured, the structure standing firm and operational is nothing short of miraculous. The bridge officials' overhaul efforts were painstakingly thorough. The artisans who recreated the historical features showed real expertise. Nowadays, the property likely appears finer than it ever would have if George had wrapped it up back in 1905. Contemporary repair methods and substances offer a sturdiness that the early versions may not have had, yet the grounds will always stay somewhat incomplete on purpose. That's by design. The upper levels, 3rd and 4th, will probably keep some spaces bare. Certain outside sections will still reveal their unfinished nature. The fortress's strength lies in that very halt, and wiping it away would strip away its essence. The remnants that endured are impressive. The edifice is largely intact, the surroundings revived, the original concept celebrated. George and Louise's aspiration brought to life for countless people to encounter. A present meant for a single lady, now open to everyone. Those who tour Hart Island depart with insights into affection, grief, drive, and the end of life. The stronghold imparts lessons subtly, without lecturing. Stroll the completed chambers to witness success. Explore the vacant ones to sense the disruption. Linger in the grounds to absorb the splendor. Gaze at images of Louise and George to appreciate their bond. The memorial succeeds through its candor. The refurbishment avoids claiming George finished it. It skips over the desertion. It avoids idealizing without facing the sorrow. The property conveys reality. Drive halted. Romance cut short by passing. Years of deterioration. Ultimate salvation. Everything on display. Everything respected. The parts that persisted hold weight. More than rock and metal. It's the tale. Beyond mere design. Its significance. Hart Island in the present stands as George's offering, arriving 74 years delayed to a crowd he couldn't have foreseen. Louise never witnessed its completion, yet throngs have. Their tribute to romance evolved into a symbol of romance broadly. Timeless, impactful, deserving of care. A tribute to romance. Hart Island functions these days as a marriage spot, visitor draw, heritage landmark, and boost to the economy in the Thousand Islands area. But at its core, it endures as what George Bolt envisioned, a tribute to romance. More than 100 nuptials take place at the stronghold each year. Pairs tie the knot amid the Italian gardens against the fortress backdrop, inside the altar tower's shell room with river views, across terraces toward the water, or in numerous enchanting spots throughout the property. Every union weaves in yet another romance to the isle where George and Louise's was cut off. The twist is profound. George constructed it in seclusion for just one person. Today, it's among New York State's top public spots for ceremonies. The deepest personal act turned into the broadest communal ritual space, yet that might fit perfectly. Romance ought not be concealed. Publicly honoring it respects what George held close. Those who wed at Hart Island grasp they're joining a bigger saga. They're familiar with George and Louise's background. They recognize the fortress as the supreme amorous declaration. They understand its unfinished state, forsaken upon Louise's death, left partial as an enduring nod to romance disrupted by life's end. Exchanging vows, there involves embracing that backdrop. Affection and sorrow woven together, courtship and hardship bound as one. Each ceremony at Bolt Castle quietly nods to romance unfolding in time, with finality lurking behind every promise and oaths given amid doubt. That's truer than what typical wedding sites provide. The fortress avoids illusions of romance triumphing fully or ensuring endless bliss. It reveals that romance counts exactly due to time's brevity. George shared 26 years alongside Louise, insufficient yet authentic in full. The stronghold bears witness. Today's pairs capture their ceremonies in depth across Hart Island. The couple on the fortress stairs, the group in the landscapes, the rite in the altar tower, the gathering in leased pavilions on the lawns. All occasions get captured, posted online, stored online. George and Louise couldn't have pictured such tools, but they grasped that key instance merit documentation. Past ceremonies, the fortress draws sightseers chasing heartfelt vibes. Pairs come for milestone dates. Engagements unfold often. Fellows drop to one knee in the grounds, presenting jewels as the fortress rises evocatively nearby. The property's allure and poignant backstory foster a mood that draws folks hunting special locales for pivotal relational milestones. Yet the fortress pulls in guests without any romantic aim too. Households holiday in the Thousand Islands and slot Hart Island into their plans. Heritage buffs arrive to delve into Gilded Age building styles and societal context. Design learners scrutinize the structure's layout and build. Snappers seize the property's charm. Classroom outings provide learning excursions. The range of guests highlights the fortress's draw, stretching past just romance. Indeed, this tale is a romance at heart, yet it doubles as a saga of immigrant triumph, an engineering marvel, a showcase of Gilded Age extravagance and drive, a lesson in safeguarding history, a victory narrative, a catalyst for growth, and a learning tool. These roles all intertwine seamlessly. The economy of the Thousand Islands area relies heavily on visitors, with Bolt Castle as the central draw. Lodging spots, eateries, excursion operators, and retailers all thrive thanks to the roughly 200,000 guests the site pulls in each year. Folks flock to the spot just to explore Hart Island, then pour cash into nearby ventures during their stay. The financial ripple effects are clear-cut. Every year, millions in revenue pour into the community from castle-driven travel. Employment opportunities stem directly from its upkeep. Skippers on vessels, guides for tours, personnel at inns, servers in dining halls. The choice by bridge officials in 1977 to manage the castle has yielded impressive returns for the locale. Such a commercial role would have astonished George Bolt. He constructed it solely for personal enjoyment, with no plans for public profit. Nevertheless, it now sparks more business vitality than numerous enterprises. What started as a tribute to intimate affection evolved into a financial boon supporting countless livelihoods. The learning aspect carries equal weight. Groups from schools visit Hart Island to delve into Gilded Age lore, building techniques, societal hierarchies, and tales of newcomers. The castle turns vague lessons from the past into something concrete. Young visitors glimpse the lifestyles of affluent clans. They grasp the vastness of Gilded Age building endeavors. They absorb details on artistry, mechanics, and planning. The tale of its revival imparts key ideas on conservation. Pupils discover the value of aging edifices, the methods of refurbishment, and the efforts needed to protect landmarks. They observe the contrast between the revamped ground level and the raw upper stories, realizing that upkeep demands decisions on restorations versus leaving elements untouched. The Immigrant Rise to Fame arc strikes a deep chord. George Bolt landed in America at age 13, penniless. He started scrubbing plates. Through grit, talent, and his alliance with Louise, he ascended to one of the nation's richest figures. That path, from kitchen help to estate creator, captures the essence of the American ideal. Still, the narrative adds layers to that ideal. George attained remarkable fortune and status. However, he failed to rescue Louise. His riches secured the finest treatments available in 1900, which fell short. Prosperity offered ease but no remedy. Accomplishments couldn't ward off sorrow. The castle endures as proof that certain losses defy any price tag. This layered quality elevates the account beyond a basic climb from poverty to plenty. George tasted victory and defeat, erected a dynasty, yet endured heartbreak. He realized aspirations only to watch them shatter. His existence blended glory and ruin. The half-done castle mirrors that tension in stone, progress halted, triumphs partial, goals derailed by fate's finality. Today's explorers connect with this intricacy. In a time that often peddles a straightforward path to fulfillment, labor diligently, amass wealth, find joy, the Bolt Chronicle delivers a subtler reality. Diligence and riches don't shield against deep grief. Existence defies simplicity. Affection holds true value. Mortality arrives unbidden. Craft your legacy in the time you have. The castle also symbolizes unity in bonds that echo our current world. George and Louise forged their world as a team. She wasn't a mere adornment. She matched him in vision, oversight, and creativity. Their hospitality ventures flourished equally from her input as his. Hart Island sprang from joint imagination, not his solo decree overriding her tastes. Couples today, touring the site, frequently highlight this teamwork dynamic. The Bolts union exemplified balanced teamwork in an age when equals in marriage were scarce. Louise labored by George's side, added her full share, and co-led choices. The structure they co-created embodies their combined perspectives, his bold drive and her eye for beauty, his focus on form, and her intuition for ambiance. Such a model of alliance endures in importance. The castle stands not as a testament to one man's pride. It honors a mutual aspiration. George erected it for Louise, but she molded its essence. Her touch appears everywhere. Absent her, it might have lacked the same grace, perhaps seeming ordinary. Their synergy rendered it extraordinary. The site's unfinished state has transformed into its strongest allure. Had George finished it, Hart Island would house a grand residence, stunning, noteworthy from history's view, but Just one more Gilded Age holding. Plenty like it dot the landscape, some polished and welcoming crowds. Yet the raw edges set Bolt Castle apart, the bare chambers, the halted work, the abrupt end. These spark a visceral pull that finishing would dilute. Guests sense the break on a gut level. They encounter mourning via design. The edifice instructs simply by remaining partial. This unfinished state ties into the wider human condition. So many lives remain partial, ambitions left hanging, aspirations unmet, endeavors dropped, and death cuts short every existence in the end. The castle's unfinished form reflects that shared reality. It confronts the core truth of existence head-on. We launch pursuits we never wrap up. We construct visions of tomorrows we never inhabit. We cherish bonds we eventually see severed. Such candor elevates the castle to something deeply resonant beyond simple allure. Aesthetics count, of course. The grounds are breathtaking, yet significance outweighs it. Heart Island conveys profound insights on affection, bereavement, the passage of years, and our finite span. Its very unfinished quality imparts lessons that a polished version could never convey. Contrasting it with fellow Gilded Age estates proves revealing. The breakers in Newport, fully realized and upheld by kin for generations before passing to the Preservation Society of Newport County, dazzles. Marble House, likewise in Newport, dazzles with its design brilliance. Biltmore in North Carolina looms vast and intricate. These sites are grand and compelling visits. Still, they function mainly as curated showcases of opulence, striking, rich in heritage, yet somehow detached on an emotional level. You wander their halls, marveling at the artistry and grandeur, but without forging a bond to the lineages behind them. Heart Island stands apart. It draws you into George and Louise's world. Their narrative clicks into place. You sense the authenticity of their devotion, the rawness of their sorrow, the depth of their misfortune. This heartfelt pull renders Heart Island more enduring than grander edifices devoid of such storytelling depth. The role it plays in weddings ties everything together neatly. George erected the castle as a tribute for a single ceremony, his union with Louise, immortalized in stone. Today, countless pairs tie the knot there each year. A shrine to one romance now embraces multitudes. Where death halted one love, fresh romances bloom. Such persistence resonates. George and Louise's tale wrapped in sorrow. She passed far too soon. He never mended. The castle lay forsaken, yet love endures. Fresh vows echo, new alliances take root, existence marches on amid personal heartaches. The castle facilitates this onward flow. It serves as both elegy for a love that faded and toast to love reborn, relic of yesterday and stage for tomorrow. George crafted it in retrospect, saluting the intimacy he and Louise once knew. Yet, it thrives prospectively, nurturing the intimacies yet to unfold. This blend of timelines, revering history while opening doors to what's next, fuels the castle's potency as a symbol. It defies stasis. It transcends mere commemoration. It's a vibrant hub where legacy and now intermingle, where George and Louise's legacy shapes but doesn't overshadow modern joys. The upkeep strategy reinforces this vision. The Bridge Authority avoided turning it into a sterile exhibit, rooms sealed behind barriers, pristine but inert. Instead, they've fostered an active haven. Stroll the chambers, join nuptials amid the blooms, dine in the cafe or oyster tower, immerse in the property as a breathing entity, not a static tribute. This method better captures George and Louise's dreams than rigid safeguarding ever could. They envisioned no gallery. They sought a bustling haven, a space alive with activity. That millions of outsiders now inhabit it, rather than a single household, doesn't betray their goal. It amplifies it. Their devotion lays the groundwork for devotions to come. Heart Island nowadays embodies shrine, gathering spot, draw for crowds, economic driver, learning hub, and matrimonial hotspot all at once. These roles don't clash, they harmonize. Tourism bolsters upkeep. Upkeep yields stunning settings. Settings welcome ceremonies. Ceremonies affirm love's persistence. That persistence pays homage to the devotion that birthed the castle. George aimed to bestow on Louise an enduring token, a tangible emblem of their bond outlasting their days. He exceeded even that vision. The castle endures. The affection it symbolizes touches souls who never crossed paths with George or Louise. It resonates not in spite of its unfinished edges, but precisely because of them. The halt infused it with purpose that finality might have dulled. Monument to love, that's George's creation, that's its legacy. More than bricks and mortar, an ethos, beyond form, a message. Hart Island reminds us that love warrants such grand gestures, that endings loom unavoidable, yet can't obliterate what transpired, that raw edges ring true, sorrow lingers, and splendor persists regardless. The tribute to George and Louise's passion evolved into a tribute to passion writ large, timeless, compelling, deserving of festivity amid the unknown. That shift from intimate to communal, particular to all-encompassing, one duo's journey to humanity's shared path. That's what sets Hart Island above mere Gilded Age relics. It's a site where love gets recalled, rejoiced, revered, and renewed. Where George envisioned, or perhaps Louise, yet now it draws millions who connect with their personal affections, heartbreaks, and aspirations. The tribute he crafted for a single soul now resonates universally. That's its enduring strength. That's what has endured. The incomplete wonder. Step into a third-floor chamber at Bolt Castle these days. Vast emptiness, stark walls, a few etched with graffiti from years of neglect. Raw brickwork where no plaster was ever applied. Window openings devoid of panes or fitted with newly placed glass from the revival efforts. The flooring is sturdy yet unpolished. This space feels whole and wanting at once. Solid in form, rough in appearance. That's by design. The preservation crew could polish this area off. They possess the funds, expertise, and blueprints, but they opt against it. The unfinished state fulfills a role. It imparts lessons that polish can't convey. Within this barren chamber, the halt in building becomes clear. Laborers simply departed. Initiatives ceased halfway. Designs were discarded. George's wire from January 7, 1904, cast effects that linger 120 years on. The space reveals time frozen, labor disrupted, vision suspended. Descend once more to the polished ground level. An entirely contrasting vibe. Graceful chambers, antique furnishings revived to mirror their 1905 look, had the building pressed ahead. Stunning, practical, whole. The disparity across levels drives the message home. Fullness illustrates the original aim. Unfinishedness highlights the cutoff. In tandem, they narrate the full tale. Alone, either loses impact. The fortress's significance arises from their proximity. This prompts a deeper query. Should finalizing the castle today prove fitting or misguided? Reasons to wrap it up abound. George envisioned a done structure. The initial drawings persist. Artisans might execute the leftover sections per the details. The property would dazzle more in full array. Guests could tour the whole as he pictured it. Counterpoints to finishing carry more weight. George halted the build deliberately. Louise's passing made pursuing her memorial feel improper to him. Realizing it today disrespects his resolve. The rawness has evolved into the site's core allure, instructing via what's missing. To seal it would wipe out that insight, turning it into yet another polished estate instead of a singular emblem of halted devotion. The revival group decided wisely. Complete sufficient parts to reveal the goal. Keep ample sections raw to depict the break. Strike equilibrium between triumph and sorrow. Respect both George's dream and his mourning. This outlook reaches past design. Existence is an incomplete creation too. We scheme, erect, aspire. Then events derail us. Demise, sickness, fate. No one wraps up every goal. Most existences close amid loose ends, unfulfilled ambitions, forsaken endeavors. The castle validates that reality, renders it tangible, proves that unfinished doesn't equal defeat. George Bolt thrived remarkably. An immigrant scullery hand turned rich hotel magnate, erected a domain, embodied the American ideal. Still, his grand work stayed partial. Prosperity and partiality dwelled side by side. That's truthful in manners our society seldom embraces. We laud endings, triumphs, wins. We conceal flops, partials, discards. The castle rejects such hiding. It parades the partial boldly, declares that the partial holds value too. It instructs exactly through its partiality. George's further inheritances reached fruition. The Waldorf Astoria thrived for decades. The Bellevue Stratford aided Philadelphia across much of the 1900s. Those hotels met their aims, performed their roles, hit their marks. Yet we don't chiefly recall George for those wins. His fame stems from the partial castle. The halted tribute imparts more than the finished ends. The dropped venture echoes louder than the booming enterprises. Irony lies therein. George's career highs, the items he finalized, the tasks he concluded, serve as asides. His intimate setback, the fortress he forsook, defines his legacy. Not due to setback outweighing win, but because this particular partiality uncovers something shared about affection, bereavement, and mortal bounds. The castle further unveils George's nature. Post Louise's death, he might have wrapped it. Funds, means, crew stood poised to resume. Finalizing needed perhaps 6 more months. The outlay was sunk. $2.5 million invested, bulk of labor expended. Wrapping up would demand modest extra and yield prized real estate. He declined, opted to squander millions in sunk costs, opted to abandon what neared 90% done. That call exposes his sorrow's profundity. The Castle Sans Louise lacked sense. Finalizing it amounted to disloyalty. Advancing when he couldn't advance, sealing what was meant to share. That pick has drawn critique for over a century. History. People ponder if George's choice stemmed from sorrow or shrewdness, if he was paying tribute to Louise or merely minimizing damage, if forsaking the project was a heartfelt tribute or a calculated move. Likely, it blended the two. Sorrow and shrewdness can coexist. George's world shattered after Louise's passing, no doubt about that. Yet he was a savvy entrepreneur who grasped the idea of irrecoverable investments. A castle stripped of its reason no longer added up economically. Heartache and fiscal reality might converge to halt the work. The key lies in the outcome. The forsaken castle gained deeper significance than a finished one ever could. George's choice, regardless of the exact blend of reasons, forged something enduring. Not his original plan. He meant it as a secluded present for Louise. Instead, it evolved into a communal landmark that illuminates themes of affection, bereavement, and human finitude. After 1904, George avoided any public talk of the castle, offered no rationale for his halt, and steered clear of the island forever. That reticence now weaves into the tale. The unspoken aspects resonate as strongly as the structure itself. His quietude allows the edifice to convey its message. The vacant chambers, the left-behind implements, the landscape sketched out, but left half-formed as dreamed. The boathouse primed for vessels that arrived too late. The power station erected to energize an existence that never unfolded. These elements whisper of aspirations cut short and visions unfulfilled, all wordlessly. George passed away on December 5, 1916, 12 years following Louise, felled by a heart attack at 65. During that dozen years, he shunned Hart Island entirely, kept laboring, kept escaping summers to the Thousand Islands at Wellesley Farms, kept supporting causes, but never stepped onto the spot holding the stalled castle. Such discipline stands out. The island lay in plain sight from Wellesley. George gazed at it over the waves. Each summer, the incomplete castle loomed as a constant cue to his creation and its stalled state. He resisted any pull of wonder, reminiscence, or need for resolution. He kept his distance. Did that reflect sound mourning or evasion? Revering Louise's legacy or self-inflicted torment, advancing onward or lingering in limbo? Surely shades of each. Mourning defies simplicity. Holding to total avoidance for 12 years proves a feat, yet George upheld it to his end. His interment next to Louise at Woodlawn Cemetery rounded out the narrative. He raised a castle for her, deserted it upon her death, never went back, then perished, laid to rest alongside her. His legacies endure in his holdings, the half-built castle on the island, the joint tomb in the Bronx. Each narrates bonds, absence, loyalty. The castle endures now thanks to outsiders who grasped its worth when George, in his abandonment, deemed it worthless. He figured it pointless sans Louise. He erred. Its poignancy arose exactly from her void. The unfinished state imparts lessons a polished version couldn't. That insight dawned 73 years later. From 1904 until 1977, the castle crumbled. Then, unfamiliar hands stepped in. Employees from the Bridge Authority, strangers to George and Louise, yet aware the site held importance. They salvaged it, not to fulfill his blueprint, but to safeguard the pause he imposed. The revival effort now spans 47 years, 2/3 the duration of its neglect. The castle has received care longer than it suffered decay. The effort prevailed, the landmark persisted, the chronicle keeps unfolding. Since 1978, more than 4 million visitors have explored Hart Island. 4 million souls treading through George and Louise's halted vision. 4 million grasping insights on romance, grief, passage, and ending via stone and space. 4 million envisioning the castle's potential fulfillment. Every guest glimpses the possibilities. That's beyond George's wildest scope. He crafted for a single soul. The landmark now enriches multitudes. The personal offering turned communal gem. The close act morphed into broad wisdom. The castle George saw as empty without Louise now resonates universally. The incomplete wonder reveals that unfinishedness doesn't erode worth, that a break can birth purpose, that what's missing can articulate as vividly as what's there, that endeavors left behind hold equal weight to those wrapped up, that romance severed by demise retains its essence, that sorrow etched in rock can instruct across eras. Hart Island stands presently as a tribute to devotion, yet also to transience, to our endings, to how nothing endures, and how fleeting pursuits can still profoundly touch. The castle won't last eternally. Someday, stone yields to time. But presently, it rises, it imparts, it signifies. George Bolt, the 13-year-old kitchen hand who rose to castle architect, aimed to offer his spouse something everlasting. He surpassed that unknowingly. The castle rises not per his blueprint, polished, secluded, inhabited, but as fate shaped it, partial, open, resonant. The landmark thrives not in spite of its gaps, but through them. The partial marvel, more compelling in its halt than it could have been whole, conveys via voids, articulates through what lingers unsaid. Through quiet reverence, we pay tribute to love, not by hiding sorrow, but by letting it remain in plain sight. That's the legacy George created, even without realizing it. That's what endures. That's what counts. The fortress remains half-built, certain chambers polished and ready, while others lie vacant. Some landscapes revived, others bearing signs of neglect. The memorial partially realized, intentionally left in its halted form. This isn't defeat. This is truth. This is the essence. Affection halted, efforts forsaken, aspirations shattered, existence truncated, every aspect etched into the rock, every element revealing what wholeness might conceal. The incomplete wonder serves as a testament. We construct as much as possible, cherish whom we can, envision what we might, until fate intervenes. That's not a shortcoming. That's our humanity. George erected a palace for Louise. She passed away prior to its completion. Overwhelmed by mourning, he left it behind. It crumbled over generations. Outsiders revived it. Vast crowds have flocked there. The tribute crafted for a single soul now benefits multitudes. The offering cut short by mortality continues to offer value regardless. That's the tale. That's the lesson from Hart Island. That's why the unfulfilled stronghold outweighs countless polished ones. The unfinished quality is the core. The disruption is the significance. The void is the essence. Affection rendered tangible via its absence. That's George Bolt's creation. That's what persisted. On Hart Island now, amid a warm summer day, vessels dock with sightseers aboard. Folks stroll amid the stronghold, delving into spaces both adorned and bare. They pause in the grounds Louise envisioned. They snap images of the spires George raised. They absorb tales of romance, bereavement, drive, and heartache. Afterward, they depart, head back to the continent, resume their routines. Yet a shift occurs. They've encountered a tribute to affection that's candid about finality. They've wandered a structure that acknowledges its gaps. They've immersed in a site that respects mourning without succumbing to it. That's the stronghold's power, not via sermons or clarifications, but via its very being, via rock and emptiness, via completed areas alongside hollow ones, cohabiting, via splendor paused yet enduring in grace. George Bolt began as a kitchen hand, rose to hospitality magnate, fashioned a citadel, endured his spouse's loss, forsook his vision, and perished. The arc appears sorrowful, triumph eroded by absence, but such an interpretation overlooks the vital. George shared 26 years with Louise. He forged a domain beside her. He crafted elegance in tandem with her. He knew a bond so deep that its rupture left him unable to press on with an endeavor rooted in their joint world. That's not calamity. That's affection validating its authenticity via sorrow's profundity. The citadel endures as evidence, not that affection overcomes everything. It doesn't. Louise departed. George lamented. The citadel stayed unresolved. Affection couldn't avert the parting or dissolve the hurt, yet it held such weight that fortunes were poured into memorials for it, that projects were halted when the recipient vanished. That holds value. In a society that frequently views romance lightly, the citadel offers a rebuttal. Affection warrants citadels. Affection demands upon its close that pursuits be left dangling as a fitting reply. Affection surpasses finality, surpasses fiscal logic, surpasses swift recovery. The memorial George fashioned for one now aids millions. Each pair wedded there joins the custom he ignited, erecting, even fleetingly, tributes to affection. Each explorer traversing the grounds or vacant chambers grasps insights on transience and loyalty. Each observer spotting the citadel from afar perceives how certain human journeys extend beyond solitary existences. Unlike fellow Gilded Age estates, vanity endeavors flaunting riches and rank, this was a present, private tender, erected not to dazzle the elite, but to delight one lady. That contrast carries weight. Vanity tributes abound. Affection tributes are scarce. The Breakers, Biltmore, Marble House, grand edifices displaying capital's reach. Bolt Castle reveals what affection can evoke. The divide isn't in scale or ornamentation. It's in the driving force. George didn't erect to rival or parade. He erected to bestow beauty on Louise, a distinct motivation, a distinct import. The unresolved condition imparts the ultimate insight. Transience, all fades, unions dissolve in death, structures erode, domains collapse, all is fleeting. Yet fleeting lacks purpose? No. George and Louise's 26 shared years molded all that came after. 2 offspring, a commercial realm, hospitality breakthroughs, and a citadel instructing millions on affection despite its gaps. Fleeting held meaning. Unresolved held meaning, halted held meaning. The citadel affirms it. From scullery worker to architect, from newcomer to tycoon, from obscurity to figure whose tribute lures hundreds of thousands yearly, George Bolt's journey was remarkable. But what renders his narrative timeless isn't the triumph, it's the affection, and the resolve to relinquish all when affection ceased. The citadel George. The fortress crafted by George, for Louise, remained half-formed after her passing, salvaged by kind souls, painstakingly revived across years, and now draws crowds by the millions. It endures not in the form George envisioned, but as it evolved, a tribute to devotion, grief, collaboration, and the notion that unfinished creations can shine as flawless exactly due to their gaps. Hart Island's stronghold, rising on its heart-like landmass, erected by a man who rose from poverty for the woman who meant his world. Forsaken following her death, reclaimed at a pivotal time, it persists now, imparting lessons George and Louise never foresaw, yet somehow enabled. Their romance concluded on January 7, 1904. Yet romance endures within the fortress, the landscapes, the vacant chambers, and the throngs who arrive and grasp truths about their personal affections, sorrows, and finitude. George halted the work. But the building process endures. Each guest finishes the structure in their mind's eye. Each ceremony held there layers fresh bonds atop ancient ones. Each individual who grasps the tale infuses deeper purpose into the landmark. The fortress George raised for Louise now claims the public. Far from undermining his vision, this realizes it in ways surpassing his dreams. He sought to offer her enduring legacy. He succeeded, though differently from his blueprint. Gazing from Hart Island toward the St. Lawrence River, you witness the currents drifting onward in perpetual flux. The waterway preceded George and Louise. It flows present. It will linger long after the fortress decays into unclaimed remnants. Yet, in this instant, right here, the fortress rises firm. The tribute functions. The passion it embodies holds weight. George raised it for Louise. Humanity preserved it for all. Each gesture proved fitting. Each form of affection, passionate and communal, carries significance. From humble dishwasher to grand architect, the alliance that forged ends and aspirations. The calamity that shattered plans, the neglect that birthed significance, the salvation that respected the disruption. Every element counts, every piece instructs. Hart Island looms as a symbol of passion that concedes passion cannot ward off sorrow, yet affirms passion suffices to warrant erecting fortresses regardless. Flawed tribute, partial tribute, truthful tribute. Such is what George Bolt fashioned, such is what endured, such is what endures.